Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Renfrew County Finance and Administration Committee of Thursday, April 15th, 2021. It is 9:32, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Connie, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, to committee, yes, roll call has been taken.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Can I get an adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on March 18th, 2021, please? Moved by Councillor Sweet, second by Councillor Hunt. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, committee. At this time, I'd like to apologize to our delegation. As you heard, I'm having some connectivity problems. Welcome to 2021. This is our life now. But it is my pleasure to welcome Constable Chris Purdy of the OPP, Jean Soulier, CEO of Bus Patrol, and I believe we have, do you have somebody, and Roberto, you're part of this delegation as well, sir? Excellent, welcome. And I see Councillor Donoghue is coming in right now. So at this time, I will pass this over. Who would like to take the lead on that? Would that be Constable Purdy?
Yes, sorry, it seems to be I have some camera difficulties here. I don't know if it's showing up on your end or not. It was working this morning, but I'll stop the video there as long as you can hear me okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you turned your video off as well. And
I thought I could correct it, but I don't know. I rarely use Zoom, so I apologize on that. But I will just do a brief introduction, and Jean Soulier is going to be giving the bulk of the presentation. So the reason we want to speak to council today is just in regards to school bus safety. I've been a member of the Upper Ottawa Valley OPP. I've been a police officer for 19 years now, but I've always had an interest in traffic safety. And one of the things that I noticed that was going on is that there was fewer and fewer complaints in regards to vehicles passing stop school buses. So when speaking with transportation companies, I had learned that it's still occurring, but it simply wasn't being reported. So when conducting a school bus stop, the driver has a lot of responsibilities. They were trying to multitask, operating the signals, watching the children, opening the door, and watching for other motorists. And what was happening is that when these vehicles were passing stop school buses, the drivers have minimal time to react in order to capture enough information for police to follow up, including a license plate. So I began researching into using camera systems in order to capture offending vehicles. And I learned of the bus patrol system. So I'm going to allow Jean Soulier to explain the system, and then we can discuss how it'll be appropriate to Renfrew County.
Thank you. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Constable and or Officer, sorry, and all the group from the committee. I'm Jean Soulier. I'm CEO and founder of Bus Patrol. I'm a Canadian boy who now lives in America, and we actually developed this product in Canada. I was born in Montreal and raised in Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga areas. And I've been working with the consortiums from across the province in developing this, which is now, like I said, the most deployed stop arm enforcement program on earth. I'd like to share my screen really quickly with you folks and then walk you through a brief presentation. There we go. Just let me know if you see the screen. Everyone see me? Like a thumbs up?
We can, Jean, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So, like I said, this idea was born. Oh, is it working now? There we go. This idea was born in 2014. And in 2015, we did our first equipment tests in North Bay and Sudbury, really with the support of the Ranger family. Adam Ranger died in 2000 because of one of these violations. And the community was looking for help, and we're a bunch of technology engineers in transportation logistics. I was working on building systems to move our things, and then I realized that the technology moving our kids was like the Flintstones, and we needed to change that. So we did a pilot program in 2016 with Peel region, Waterloo, Brantford, Sudbury, and North Bay. And then from there, built a pretty awesome platform, which allowed us to begin operations in Montgomery County, Maryland, allowed us to build out our AI processing technology, which is the best AI automated traffic enforcement technology on the planet. We've been awarded almost every single RFP in this space for the last couple of years. And we have over 25,000 buses scheduled for deployment in 2021. In the Ontario region, the pilots, and this is, to underline the seriousness of the issue, we were able to find almost 1 violation per bus per day, and that's pretty consistent across all markets in the United States as well. This is a problem that has existed forever, and it's very difficult to enforce. Police officers cannot follow every school bus, and the odds of them being next to a school bus when one of these happen is extremely small, so behavioral change is very difficult. The problem also isn't just an urban problem. It is absolutely a rural one. In Brantford, we saw 1/3 of a violation per bus per day on 450 buses. That would be 150 times a day in Brantford. Someone would pass a stop school bus. This problem is also unique in the sense that even though most of the violations occur in the more trafficked areas, the deaths are almost exclusively in rural areas. There are approximately 12 children that die every year because of this. And the reason rural areas are at risk is because the speed of travel is so much higher and the survivability much less. So something needs to be done. Now I'll introduce you to the technology. So Ava is her name. She stands for Automated Violation Analysis. She's able to track 8 lanes of traffic in a variety of weather conditions and light conditions. Her plate capture is 4K in resolution, so she can see a violator's plate more clearly than most people can watch movies at home. And everything was built purposefully for the school bus. It vibrates a lot. There's a lot of humidity. It's a hard environment for technology. Our system, since we pay for 100% of those, and I'll walk through kind of that in a minute, but we have to make sure we can service them. So we've built a really robust platform. Our engineers we all have transportation, military, or aerospace experience, and that's where this was born. Here is Ava. So you'll see the amber lights flashing on the top left, and then you'll see her scanning the traffic. She can now identify when the stop arms are being released and then automatically start to tag the vehicles that are breaking the law. And really what that does is it kicks off the evidence capture process that ultimately ends up in front of a provincial offenses officer for them to issue a ticket. The type of evidence that gets produced is quite compelling. This is an example of the kinds of violations that we see. So a car stopped and other cars choosing to pass the school bus. And I like to underline that because this is not some accidental behavior. What we see is just a blatant disregard for the law. And it's this blatant disregard for the law that we've programmed through lack of enforcement. And one of the key criteria to making behavioral change work is something that has made us very successful, is that we deploy our technology on 100% of the buses. So what we try and do by deploying on 100% of the buses is instill the very same reflex we have when we're driving down the road or the highway and we see a patrol car or a cruiser ahead of us. Our first reflex is to pump the brake and then look at the speed. We're looking to affect and inject that same reflex into the communities we serve. Because once 100% of the buses are equipped, 100% of the community is aware, we actually see this reduced behavior by bad behavior by 30% year over year. Our entire process has been vetted by Fasken and Martineau. We've done all the legal research to make sure that we're compliant with the Provincial Offences Act and all of the regulations in Ontario. Again, Ava does all the work. School bus drivers can focus on the kids. She's plugged into the telemetry of the bus. She knows when the amber light's flashing, red light's flashing, and then she's able to gather evidence. Our evidence technicians make sure technically that the evidence is sound. Do we have a GPS, a location? Is the video clear? Once that's done, provincial offense officers apply their judgment as it states in the Provincial Offences Act to ensure to determine whether a violation should be issued. Once the violation is issued, it is printed and mailed and sent to the offender, and the offender can go online and view the evidence used against them. 95% of offenders pay their fine after viewing the video. 4% pay within 90 days of doing that, and 1% contest the ticket. It's actually less. And of those, almost every single case is upheld because the evidence is so compelling. So again, AVA does all the streamlining of the evidence build. Bus Patrol does not approve any citations. Provincial offenses officers properly, with their authority, to make the determination. And they do so by going through a process, which is pretty straightforward. That process, they see the evidence, and then they're able to then look at the location with a live Google map as to where that infraction occurred. They can look at all of the owner information and then decide to approve a ticket or disapprove. Then violators, they get their ticket, they go online, and they also get to see the evidence, the video of their car passing the stop school bus. They get to see the location and the date. And then they can also do things like look up the law and, you know, what are the laws and how do they apply to me? They can get support and they can make payments online. All of these things offered to the community at no cost. These programs are 100% funded from the violation revenue that gets created. That also includes all of the reporting aspects of this. So being able to measure year over year, are these programs objectively changing behavior? And when you have every bus in a community installed, you can actually start to measure route over route, stop over stop, year over year. Are our practices and policies working? And that leads us to understand how to deploy these programs efficiently. So the first moat was money. So when you have a company like Bus Patrol come in, pay for all of the investment up front, and then run these programs, allow violator revenue to pay for these programs, that removes that first piece. And then the next piece is one of education. The right way to do that is to bring the stakeholders to the table. In Suffolk County, New York, I'm giving you this as an example. We've just deployed on 5,000 buses, the largest stop arm enforcement program on earth. All of the school bus and school consortium people were all brought to the table. Superintendents, school bus transportation people. We partnered with police. We partnered with the associations. We developed a 5-point plan, a warning period, road signage requirements. We developed a school bumper sticker for the county fleet. We also built a PSA campaign, which we would do for your community as well. All of these things we would do, and then developed a school outreach and student driver education platform. Now I'm going to show you a quick commercial that's currently airing on cable TV here in New York to educate drivers on the law.
As you approach a stop school bus or driving in Suffolk County, what should you do if you are in this car or this car? New York state law says that in every case, you need to stop. With cutting-edge camera technology, Suffolk County is launching a program that can serve as a national model for school transportation safety. Stop for the bus. It's New York state law. For more information, visit suffolkcountyny.gov/schoolbus.
We've also enabled our social media advocacy platform to be able to educate communities through online services. And this is the kind of content that we deliver online so that we can educate people on how the law applies to them. This program is to raise awareness and educate people so they stop. And that education doesn't just stop with the drivers. We also have to create content for kids. So Bus Patrol has purpose-built content to increase kids' awareness. It's their feet that cross the street and they play a role in their own safety. Traditional tools have been complicated and difficult for them to absorb. We've built 3D animated videos, exercise books, songs, things like that to make sure that when they get off that bus, they become more aware. Here's a quick example of a few.
Now, children, this is important. When you cross the road, you all need to follow this code. Stay 10 big hops away from the bus so the driver can see. Always wait for the driver to give you the thumbs up and let you know it's okay to cross the road. Look left and right before you cross. Walk, don't run, just like this picture. Don't get distracted. I'm coming.
So in summary, all of the connectivity charges, the PSA development and signage, the maintenance for the hardware and the software, the customer support, and all of the adjudication services. So that's booking the court dates, managing the dockets, providing the disclosure of evidence, all managed, administrated, and paid for by Bus Patrol. Bus Patrol even reimburses police services for the time they spend supporting the program, which is quite minimal. For every 1,000 buses, we need one trained officer to be able to help us because the program is so well automated. And lastly, the thing I'm most proud of is the fact that 98% of people who get a ticket with one of our programs don't get a second one. So we know the programs are working. We know they effectively bring modern technology to a school bus. And there's no better way to know the need for that than to just walk on one. Go look around and ask yourself if it looks much different from the one you walked on when you were a kid. And then you'll see that, this type of program can change that and also change driver behavior in the process. So that is what I had to share today. And I would love to open it up to any questions if I could clarify anything that you may have or need clarified.
Thank you so much for that excellent presentation. It boggles my mind that people would pass a stop arm on a school bus. I don't get it.
Neither did I. 2015. It's hard to believe.
Back in the day when we took our 365, which would be your learner's permit, I mean, that was a question on your 365 that you stop when the stop arm's out. Anyway, I will open this up to questions or comments. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Sawyer, where did you say that the cost of or the money to pay the cost of installing these on the school buses would come from?
Yeah, so Bus Patrol funds these programs, all the upfront capital to deploy these programs. So we work with the consortium and we pay for all the equipment and all the installation. Then what happens is when the program runs, we invoice participating cities for a share of collected ticket revenue. So a percentage of collected revenue. So there's never any appropriation required, any budget required. It's always out of money that you now have in your hands that you didn't before, that our invoices are due.
And so do you have a set rates? Let's say it costs $500,000 for this project. Does your revenue stream stop when you hit that number, or is it a continuous?
No, it's continuous because the costs of operating the program are a lot more than the equipment. It's a lot of the technology, like the data charges as an example, as those buses are creating video data and putting it over a cell network. We pay for 100% of the costs always. We pay for 100% of the maintenance always, and we take a share of the revenue always. And then the revenue received by our partner cities, by the way, is net revenue to them. So.
Okay. Thank you. So for the bus operators that are having a very tough time between RFPs driving the prices down and the stoppage because of COVID, they won't be seeing increased costs that will drive them out of business.
In fact, they'll be seeing savings because these RFPs require things like GPS and cameras be included. So what we're doing is we're removing that burden from them by providing these systems at no cost. We also provide the internal camera systems that they use today. As once you wire the bus for enforcement, you can do a lot more. And these programs pay for those systems as well. So operators love us because one, we save them money, and two, we pay them for maintenance when they have resources available. And if they would like to participate in installing these systems with us, we pay them for that too. So we create a new revenue stream for these operators.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My
Good.
pleasure.
Good Dragon's Den question, Brian.
I like it.
Yes, Councillor Donahue, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Murphy, and thank you very much, Mr. Soulier. A very impressive technology that you're offering. I'm stunned, actually. I'm not surprised. There are scofflaws regardless of the law. I'm stunned at the level, the 1 per day per bus, or even in rural, I think you had suggested that it's 1/3 per bus per day. Even at that number, it is stunning. The level of disregard for the law. Perhaps certainly some of the clips that you had showed were multi-lane. I know that when it's a divided highway, it is a different situation, but I'm presuming that some of that has to be ignorance of the extent of the law, as opposed to certainly the ones that showed people passing cars that were stopped. There is perhaps a particular fate awaits them at the end of this life, that sort of person. In any event, it does not seem on what I'm seeing that there's a downside. I'm presuming that this presentation is being given here is because of the means of financing this through the POA court system, over which the County of Renfrew has the authority. Is that, am I grasping that, as opposed to why this is not being done, say, through the schools or through the Joint Transportation Consortium?
That's a great question. So the lead of the contract is always the schools and the transportation consortium, but the authority over the revenue streams belongs to the counties or the cities. So how these programs work is we contract with the consortium, and then the cities are a party to that contract, and they allow the revenue to be distributed based on the revenue sharing provisions we negotiate in the contract. And then law enforcement, they also, by the way, the cities agree to either hire a provincial offenses officer to review these fines, or have local law enforcement review the evidence, because Bus Patrol doesn't have the authority to issue a ticket. So we need the county's help in allowing the money to be spread in order to fund these programs once collected, and B, in order to provide us the law enforcement support that we need by law in order to issue these tickets legally.
Okay, just a follow-up as well. It's just become a little complicated here because, of course, the County of Renfrew doesn't have policing per se. Each of the lower tier municipalities have policing, but the very fact that you have representatives of enforcement on here, presumably that the OPP has engaged with this in other jurisdictions already. The follow-up question is with respect to the capital and the ongoing operating. So all of this is captured within that invoicing, and within the invoicing, within the POA system, is there also a stream that identifies the revenue that is being generated from those disregarding the bus stop signs, so that we are able to track per se and separate it from the other POA offenses?
Correct. The system of record is Alert Bus, which is our platform. So all of the tickets are essentially, all the evidence packages are born in Alert Bus, and they're sent to and approved by law enforcement within our platform. So we know whenever a ticket is issued, we then integrate back to the provincial systems to make sure that those are updated. And then we've got a truth of this ticket exists and now needs to be sent out and paid. Once it's paid, Alert Bus also becomes a system of record. We have all of the payment processing capabilities. So where people are allowed to go online and process, the money gets deposited directly into the county accounts. And then once that money gets deposited into the county accounts, we provide a reconciliation monthly, which essentially says, here's all the tickets that were paid this month, and here is an invoice for Bus Patrol share.
Okay, thank you. And finally, then, it seems like there's a few moving parts, a few different parties to this agreement. From this, in your experience, and let's gear it towards the Ontario experience, is there a template that's put up? How do we engage as the authority over the POA court system? Where do we engage with the schools? Presumably the schools, the Transportation Consortium has to make the decision to embrace this technology and go with this technology, at which point then the discussion has to be held with the County of Renfrew.
Correct. So first of all the consortiums in Ontario know me very well. They helped me build this company really through their knowledge of pupil transportation. So I know that they all really badly want this technology. In Ontario, the first program will be live in September. So there's a few different programs. There's one that's being born in Chatham, Kent. with Rick Nichols' group. And there's another one being born in Peel region, another one in Belleville. So Renfrew County will have two options. They'll have the option to opt in to one of those existing programs, and therefore the provincial offenses officers will be hired. Everything will be handled. All you'll have to do is opt in and then accept our invoices and accept the flow of funds. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is simply to engage directly with Bus Patrol and then create your own local program. There is no financial difference between the two. In both cases, it's the same money going to you. And the same safety and the same coverage for 100% of your buses. I would recommend maybe Renfrew, opt into a program that's existing. That's probably going to be the simplest and fastest way to get these programs live for your community.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for the questions. Very good one.
Okay, I see the warden and then Councillor Bros.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Soulier, for the presentation. Rather disturbing, but something I think we have to realize exists in our community. I can still, if I close my eyes, I can see the billboard of that little boy in North Bay. So, that's really disturbing. I guess my question would probably go to Constable Purdy. I'm just wondering, as it stands today, would you have any idea how many people are being ticketed for illegally passing a school bus at the present time?
Yeah, absolutely. I had conversations with Jennifer Grant, that's your provincial prosecutor. First of all, she's completely on board the program. I've reviewed it with her. She sees no issues in having enforcement action done and successful prosecutions in court if necessary. In regards to the statistics, I've seen them reduce over the number of years. So she provided to me through the ICON system the numbers. Now, there's two ways to charge a offender. It can be a charge to the driver if the driver is identified, or in the case of what would happen in the video system, the owner of the vehicle would be charged in lieu of identifying the driver. The fines are the same. The only difference is in regards to demerit points. There's no demerit points associated to an owner. So in 2016, there was a total of 29 offense issued in regards to passing a stopped school bus. 2017, there was a total of 25, reduced to 22 in 2018, 12 in 2019, and in 2020 there was 4 issued in total. That was 2 owner and 2 driver. Now, obviously in 2020 we had some issues in regards to the school buses operating, and that's, I think, primarily where there is a big difference dropping down. And that's where I started looking at the statistics to turn around and say, why are these numbers dropping? Is it through driver education? Are they getting the message? And then in speaking with the companies, various companies and the consortium, I've learned that it's not quite the case. It's just simply the responsibilities involving the driver to capture enough information for enforcement. And if I could just give a very brief example, it's about a month now, a little more than a month, where there was a call for service that another officer was investigating, and the offense was witnessed by 2 people outside, and they're claiming that this driver passed a stopped school bus. Now, the driver was spoken to after the fact. They were identified, and they simply say, no, the stop arm wasn't deployed. So it's a little bit of both sides. Now, the nice thing about this system that's being provided by Bus Patrol, it takes away all of that. It either happened or it didn't, and the cameras are going to say it. They're going to show it with no discretion involved, right? It either is or it isn't. So that's where we're getting, and the bus driver didn't report this. The bus driver couldn't capture enough. It was independent witnesses who reported. So that's going to be kind of the difference. What I would see happening in the modeling is that offenses would actually rise. They would significantly rise because you have a system that's going to capture this and present it without, as was said, police officer following the bus. We simply just can't be there all the time. So I think the numbers are going to rise, and then they'll probably slow down and plateau a little bit as the education gets.
All right, if I may, supplementary chair, just to basically, more of a, not a question so much as a comment, in that, if the statistics, as Mr. Soulier indicated to us, are 1 infraction per day per bus, we're missing a lot of them, which means that, we're very fortunate that a lot of our children aren't being struck by a vehicle. So, as face value here, the system seems like a great idea. I really don't see a downside either. And, my hope is that through education and the PSAs that the infractions start to drop. I mean, obviously they're going to go up. We're going to catch people. We're going to let people know what's happening. But, you know, the ultimate goal here is not to get more money through POA, but to stop it from happening altogether. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Soulier. Excellent presentation, and I can certainly see how through this device that enforcement would certainly increase, and the actual success in, you know, tickets being paid certainly is the reality. However, the one thing you did mention is that most people who get one ticket don't get a repeat. Is there a danger that you see or a challenge as you move forward that this system should reduce and increase education and reduce the number of tickets? It would also reduce your revenue as far as the maintenance of the system going forward. Do you see that as a challenge in the future?
That's a great question, and no, I don't. It's wonderful to be a safety company. I mean, there are some of the decisions I made when founding this company early on, right? 80% of the tickets come from 20% of the buses. So if I really wanted to just make money, I'd just put equipment on 20% of the urban buses and not equip anything else. But I didn't want a child's postal code to determine the level of safety they enjoyed, especially when I knew the risk in the rural areas was so high. So that's the concept of our model was very much a public-private partnership where the private sector goes and implements and invests all of the capital costs up front. We know that ticket rates start really high in the initial of the program, and then it goes down. But we also know that there are new drivers every year. People move in and out of communities. And we've been running these programs for long enough, since 2017, that we can actually start to model out the data in a very reliable way. So we can even start to predict ticket rates in each area. And then I look at Ontario at the aggregate. We have 19 buses already installed in Mattawa. Those buses will never pay for themselves. But we also know that in Mississauga, there's going to be thousands of tickets issued because of just the nature of their roadways. So when I look at how am I helping protect a province's children or a state's children, I look at it up here, and the more success we have in the communities we serve, the more communities will want to do business with Bus Patrol and deploy, and we will grow that way. And that's how we've been growing.
Thank you. Well, so where do we go from here? What's the next step?
I'm happy to provide you folks with some alternatives to consider as to how you would like to sign up to a program, either start your own or opt into an existing one, and share with you kind of the contract and the commercial frameworks. I do know that there are some programs that will be announcing go lives and sign contracts imminently. So our goal is to get these things up and running. So September, you all have the type of technology you need to keep your kids safe. So if you just provide me a contact who I can work with the County of Renfrew, I'm happy to keep them in the loop of what's going on.
Okay, so I think for us, Madam Warden, do you think that we should bring this delegation back to County Council so that everybody understands the platform and the modeling?
I think we can certainly do that, but I think before we bring them to County Council, perhaps we would ask Mr. Morrow just to do a little bit more background work for us, so we know, some of the ins and outs, particularly exactly what we're talking about. That if we are going forward, that the bus companies and the bus lines throughout Renfrew County are on board with all of this. Just a little bit more information. I think folks are going to want to ask questions about. Mr. Morrow, what's your comments on that?
Chair, through you to Warden Robinson. I absolutely agree. We can do at the staff level. My understanding, the connection would be through Mr. Foss and through Provincial Offenses. That's our link with this particular initiative. So we would like to do a little bit more research and speak to some of our counterparts, and then bring it back for further consideration at a future date. And again, as
I think,
Mr. Soulier's indicated, you know, it would be myself or Mr. Foss could continue to be that contact, and we would bring the information back once we flesh out a little bit more detail. Thank you, ma'am.
I think that's a fantastic plan. Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to inform you that I think I picked up this information from one of my last FCM meetings, and I did forward it on to the Director of Education, the Chair of the Board, and the local trustee from Renfrew County District School Board. So they are aware of the program, and they thought it was, I'm not sure they were before that, but they certainly responded and said it was interesting and they were looking at it.
Thank you for that. All right, so I want to thank our delegation. Between Mr. Morrow and Mr. Foss, you have your contacts, and I look forward to bringing you back to County Council at a later date.
Well, I look forward to
Thank you
present.
very much.
Thank you for all your time and consideration. I look forward to working with you guys. Have a wonderful day and be safe.
You too.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty then. So at that point, I think I will pass this over to Mr. Morrow for his departmental report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to committee. The first two items in the departmental report are information items. First one attached as Appendix 1 is the Eastern Ontario Regional Network Spring Newsletter. The focus on that newsletter is the Cell Gap initiative that the warden was involved in that announcement. I guess it was last month now, and that is attached for committee's information. The second item is a survey that we undertook of our 13 Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus upper tiers. And again, staff wanted to get a sense of where everyone else was with respect to addressing the pandemic and declared emergencies, and that is attached for committee's information. I was surprised by the results of some of the responses that we received. My initial reaction was I was not aware that 12 of the 13 had all declared a state of emergency, and I think all but 2 remain in a state of emergency. So I'm really happy that we undertook the survey. I think what you'll see in the survey is what we have done as an upper tier is very consistent with our peers throughout Eastern Ontario. So on those 2 items, Chair, I will leave it at that.
Thank you. All right, so we'll go back to information item number 1, the spring newsletter. Number 2, the survey. I had, the only thing I had, Paul, was, do we mean a declared significant weather event? Because the challenge with that is that across the county, oh, my internet's unstable, I'm sorry. Across the county, we see different weather patterns. I'm just wondering, did we mean declared emergency or a really bad snow or ice storm, or did we mean a declared significant weather event?
We meant a declared significant weather event.
Okay. I just sorry, I just wanted that clarified, just because, as I said, you know, the mayor of BLR might have a significant challenge getting to the county building, whereas the lovely Reeve and warden of Laurentian Valley could practically walk. So that was my only comment. Something maybe for discussion. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Morrow. I noted a couple of the comments scattered throughout the survey results were to the effect of would love to see the results, look forward to sharing the results, etc. That suggests to me that perhaps at a granular level at the EOWC, that there might be utility in more formally sharing of information. It seems like there is perhaps a deficit, if you will, or at least that's what I was kind of considering as I was seeing those comments as I was going through it, that just sharing the banal and the mundane oftentimes are sharing some best practices that others may not be aware of.
So I did, maybe if I may, Chair, provide a bit of a background to this. Rightly or wrongly, I attached this survey to a committee report. The survey was intended for CAOs across Eastern Ontario. It has been shared with all my colleagues. That is who completed the survey. Really, it was originally intended as an internal document. Amongst my colleagues, I could get a sense as to what everyone else was up to. So you're aware, amongst the CAOs, this has all been shared with that group. But I did think that, and I was going to leave it at the F&A committee report level in terms of sharing this information. It was just interesting, from my opinion, to see the level of consistency and approach across Eastern Ontario. So just in terms of background to your comments, Councillor Donahue, really the original impetus for this was just at the administrative type level amongst my colleagues.
Supplementary, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up on that, it's consistent, and I understood that to be the case, that this would have been done at a senior staff level. Whether this at a senior staff level, whether it is with respect to our various perhaps operations supervisors, et cetera, much like I've been advocating even within the county of formalizing and empowering senior staff to be having some discussions, to be sharing more information, to be viewing each other not as competitors but collaborators. And I think that there is, the culture is now ripe given the modernization impetus that we're hearing constantly. I think that the environment is ready now to really embrace that concept that each party, each municipality is receptive to hearing best practices or ideas coming from their neighbors, and even at a staff level. I understood that to be the case, but I'm certainly would encourage more of this.
Thank you for that. Anything further on number 2? Then, Mr. Morrow, let's move on to resolution.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I'll start with reading the recommendation regarding the FCM Board of Directors election.
Yes, please.
Recommendation, whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, represents the interests of member municipalities on policy and program matters that fall within the federal jurisdiction, whereas FCM's Board of Directors is comprised of elected municipal officials from all regions and sizes of communities to form a broad base of support and provide FCM with the united voice required to carry the municipal message to the federal government. And whereas FCM's virtual annual conference and trade show will be held June 1st to the 4th, 2021, during which time the annual general meeting will be held and followed by the election of FCM's Board of Directors. Be it resolved that the Council of the County of Renfrew endorse Councillor Glenn Doncaster to stand for election on FCM's Board of Directors and appointments to standing committees for the period starting in June 2021 and ending at the AGM in 2022. And be it further resolved that Council assumes all costs associated with Councillor Glenn Doncaster's attending FCM Board of Directors meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Benke is telling me that my video is freezing, so I'm going to stay dark. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Warden Robinson, seconded by Councillor Sweet. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious whether it be FCM, AMO, Roma. Is there any, the wording here is that the council assumes all costs associated. Do any of these organizations defray or offset any expenses, travel, et cetera?
I'm not sure. Oh, Councillor Doncaster, you're probably the best one to answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing that I would say is at meetings, quite often breakfast and lunch are provided, but as far as travel or salaries or remuneration, no, there's no, not from FCM.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, Councillor Donahue, supplementary.
Yeah, just following up on that, certainly I would understand per diems and things like that should be the responsibility, but it does seem to me that from a travel perspective, accommodation perspective, et cetera, that certainly smaller municipalities are disadvantaged. The percentage of our levy required to participate, maybe not so much in AMO, certainly I'm approaching it perhaps from my lower tier municipality with an own use levy of about $2.5 million. There's a substantial cost associated as a percentage of our levy with us being a member of AMO. Likewise, the percentage of our levy versus some of the larger urban communities, it seems that it is perhaps unbalanced, unequal. That it is something certainly I would suggest Councillor Doncaster might be worth at least raising for consideration, particularly at FCM, of simply travel. I know that when our MPs, federal MPs gather in Ottawa, they have travel budgets that recognize the difference amongst traveling, whether you are perhaps a riding that encompasses Parliament Hill, or if you are from Victoria or the Yukon.
Thank you for that. I see Rose has come out of the dark, so I'm going to throw it over to her.
If I may, Madam Chair, AMO does pay a portion of the travel costs minus $300, but now that we're not traveling, there are no expenses to be paid. Roma pays $85 per diem per meeting. So for Councillor Eamon, we do recover some of those costs.
Thank you. That's good information to have. Councillor Doncaster, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I guess I did. I just wanted to put something into perspective. So, and I'm not minimizing the costs in any way, shape, or form. York Region, who has the same status as the County of Renfrew, and typically has one member on committees or boards, pays about $200,000 a year. And this has been an issue for them for quite some time. So the larger municipalities are paying a larger amount. But I would also point out that as the county being a member of FCM automatically makes all 17 lower tier municipalities members of FCM.
Okay. Thank you for that. So there is some disparity even with the larger centers. It's very interesting. All right, anything further on number 3? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. And Mr. Morrow, let's go to the EOWC survey and declared emergency in electronic meetings, please.
Thank you, ma'am. That would be item number 4. The sorry. Oh, I see what happened. I see what happened here. It's in the title is wrong of it. So this is the amendment to the procedural bylaw, and it's just got the wrong title on it. I apologize for that.
Oh, I wasn't a stickler on that because I assumed that continuing this came out of the survey as well.
Oh, no, this is specific to our requirement to prepare an amendment to the procedural bylaw prior to the sunsetting of the provisions for electronic meetings before June 30th. So the title just throws that off. It's really amendment to the procedural bylaw. So my apologies to committee for that confusion. We'll have that changed for county council. So this
that would be grand. Thank you. Yeah.
So if committee recalls, we did a survey back, I believe, in February, and that was provided last month to committee and county council. outlining the responses back. I believe at that same meeting of County Council, I alluded to the fact that we would be bringing back an amendment to the procedural bylaw to allow for changes for the continuation of electronic meetings. And that particular change would be limited to allowing for electronic meetings during a declared emergency and during the pronouncement of a significant weather event. So if I may, Chair, I'll read the recommendation.
Yes, please.
That the Finance and Administration Committee recommends that County Council direct staff to amend section 6.1 of the procedural bylaw 85-10 as amended to allow for the continuation of electronic participation of members of council in electronic meetings during a declared emergency and during a declared significant weather event as presented below. And further, that section 2 definitions of the procedural bylaw be amended to include the definition of a significant weather event emergency as defined by Ontario Regulation 239/02. And further, that section 21 delegations be amended to permit the participation of delegations to committees and county council via electronic means at the discretion of the presiding officer and the clerk. And further, that staff participation via electronic means at meetings of committee and county council be at the discretion of the chief administrative officer. That is the recommendation, ma'am.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Conversation. Warden Robinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just wondering, the line that says during a declared significant weather event or declared emergency, should the words within the county of Renfrew be included?
Oh, yeah, that's
yes, ma'am. And is that a friendly amendment?
I'm very friendly and I'd like to offer that amendment, yes.
I'm
please.
sure that Councillor Brose and Councillor Hunt would be amenable to that. But then I would also like to make a friendly amendment that within 6.1A, that it says, or a declared significant weather event, because the resolution or the recommendation and the body of the bylaw don't match.
Sorry.
So in the recommendation, it's during a declared emergency and during a declared it should be or a declared significant weather event. But then within 6.1A, it says declared emergency or a significant weather event, not a declared significant weather event.
I see what you're saying.
And in that case, again, Chair, the words within the county of Renfrew need to be inserted as well.
Agreed. Yeah, so if the City of London has a declared significant weather event, that doesn't apply to us.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes, Mr. Morrow.
Chair, I just want to be careful in how we amend this because the wording is tricky here in that the declared significant weather event, I don't disagree with the warden's comment with respect to it being in the county of Renfrew, but I want to be careful as to where in this resolution we insert those words or how we go about it, because the first part of it would be a declared emergency either in the province of Ontario or the county of Renfrew as per the legislation. So I want to make sure that within the county of Renfrew component is specific to the declared significant weather event.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so I would just put in brackets beside declared significant weather event in brackets in the county of Renfrew. And so it's specific to that statement.
Okay. How much lead time do we have on a significant weather event? I know that generally comes out of Lee's department, but
I would defer that question to Mr. Perkins.
Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Chair to committee. Actually, significant weather event is based on Environment Canada. So usually it's 12 hours at the very least that they give us notice, but it can be less, but it's 12 hours normally that they issue a significant weather event. And that's why our policy, we follow Environment Canada. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Yes, that does help. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for this item alone, I wonder if language such as in the event that the County of Renfrew is in a declared state of emergency or a declared significant weather event would capture it. Then it is speaking particularly of the geography of Renfrew County, and given that it would be in a declared state rather than who declared it would be irrelevant. The province and the county are the only two entities that can declare a state of emergency province-wide or county-wide.
Yeah, so I'll ask James and Brian, are you okay with the language? They're just friendly amendments, right? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up. That's great. Never before have we used our thumbs so often. Is there anything further on? Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious as to if, when I read the resolution, it didn't seem to me that it actually followed the responses to the surveys, specifically around members being able to participate electronically at any meeting. And I'll use three specific examples. Councillor Love being away on Roma, Councillor Emo being away on AMO, or myself being away at FCM meetings. So if it's only during significant weather events or declared state of emergencies, then if we are on county business, it would seem that we would be excluded from participating electronically.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Well, I'll open it up. I'm sure there's going to be discussion about this county council as well, because as I just said, I mean, our geography and our topography is so all over the map that even saying a declared significant weather event, I mean, I've heard Jed say that they got a foot of snow. We got 2 feet, and Dan Lynch says, oh, we got an inch. So there's a challenge there as well if we want our members to be safe. And I'm not talking about a normal snowstorm. I'm talking about some of these icy, windblown, terrible days where our plows and our salters and sanders just can't get out fast enough to those of us that are a little more rural. So I'm not sure how we rectify that. And I do agree with Glenn. If Kim is at a Roma meeting and there's a special meeting of county council, if she's able to dial in, she should have that right. Yes, Councillor Donahue, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my estimation, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I'm not sure that it is productive engaging in any depth in this here, because I'm assuming that council is probably going to wish to engage in this as well. I have an issue with item H. Frankly, I think that electronic participation should be as if we're in the room, and there is no accommodation for electronic. You would participate electronically as if you are in the room. But that can certainly be engaged, I think, probably much more productively rather than duplicate these discussions. Through you to Mr. Morrow, I'm wondering, even at council at the end of this month, if this might be something warranting perhaps moving into a committee of the whole as opposed to a council meeting, and a committee of the whole within the council meeting. This is a substantial change given the age, now 160 years for the county of Renfrew, that probably it is worth affording the councillors some time to put forward their notions, just as Councillor Doncaster has and as I had. And I'm not sure that we're going to reach any kind of a consensus now. Any change that we may now may wish to be undone by any other councillor that does not sit on Finance and Administration.
So in order to do that, I assume we have to sever this from the report. And no, because we don't want to vote on this.
Well, actually, no, it was my suggestion, sorry, and I did not make it, and I do apologize, Madam Chair. It was my suggestion to forward this to council, whether we wish to change the language, not making it a recommendation, but leaving it open to council. Perhaps that might mollify any concerns about the committee itself making a recommendation.
I think that's a grand idea because I agree with you. I think we're going to be duplicating comments and concerns. Yes, Councillor Sweet, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Donahue. There's a lot of moving parts in this, and I think we have to be comfortable. And the point has been made with regards to the size and the geography of Renfrew County, from Clare Mariah all the way down to Arnper. Significant weather events are just brutal. You get a freezing rain up there, and as you've alluded to, you get a this down there. I think we have to somehow or other tie a bow around what is a significant weather event, and I think we have to, as being said, bring it forward to the full county council and try and definitively define what that represents and who actually is responsible for calling it. For me, in Petawawa, and for you, Jennifer, and pardon me, Chair, in Bonnechere is completely different as it is for Councillor Lynch down in Arnprior. So I would be comfortable seeing this coming forward and having the benefit of the entire county council dealing with this, because there's too many moving parts for us to try and tidy up a resolution at this point in time, I don't believe, without the benefit of the input.
Thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, what Councillor Donahue said is right. I mean, this is groundbreaking in the county of Renfrew, and these changes, you know, could last a long time. So we want to make sure that we get them right. Yes, Warden Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I just need to understand, since I will be chairing the county council meeting at the end of the month, the idea about going into committee of the whole instead of just having a discussion as part of county council. I just want to know what the difference it's going to make here.
I was going to ask the same thing, and how we achieve this and what we do with this recommendation. So Paul, I think we need some procedural help right now.
And I will have to do a little bit of investigation. My understanding, the value of going, and Councillor Donahue can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the value of going into a committee of a whole is it deals with really the notice of motion and a decision being made by committee of the whole and then being approved by county council. So it addresses that process issue. So, you know, I'm not sure. I'd have to do some more research on it. Thank you.
Okay, so what do I do with this recommendation as it stands right now?
I believe that there is a duly moved and seconded resolution in front of a committee, and you would need to call for the vote upon the once debate is completed.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Go ahead, Councillor Donahue.
A couple of things, and I at this point I was suggesting that consideration be given to committee of the whole, and the reason for committee of the whole is the rules of procedure are not nearly as stringent for a committee of the whole as they are for council. I do note and I acknowledge and commend this warden and all past wardens have certainly been quite deferential to the body, to council. The rules of procedure are fairly stringent that a member can only speak once to an issue, that a member has 5 minutes, whereas committee of the whole is similar to this committee, provides more of a conversational forum and a discussion as opposed to a formal debate. I'm not suggesting that that necessarily has to happen, and I think Mr. Morrow's suggestion of giving consideration to that is what I was seeking. With respect to the resolution that's on the floor, I'm not sure if Mr. Morrow is speaking to the actual recommendation, because I would certainly be moving, I think, because it is my intent to remove the recommendation that it probably doesn't lend itself to a friendly amendment. It seems that it is changing the intent of the resolution, that I would be moving that it be amended, that the Finance Administration Committee direct that staff advance the issue of electronic meetings to County Council rather than a recommendation. And I know that that's gotten to be complicated wording, but I think the wording should be specific to that. I'm not proposing any changes now because they could be just as easily undone. What I'm proposing as that the Finance Administration simply does not take a position on recommending it as written, but is simply forwarding it to County Council for consideration.
Okay, but at this time I have a mover and a seconder and a recommendation on the floor. So I think we need to clean that up and then figure out how we're going to get this to County Council. Paul, would you need a member's written motion?
Sorry, Chair, and I'm trying to, what would the member's written motion speak to?
Well, getting this on as committee of the whole.
Yeah, that's something I really need to investigate. We've never used committee of the whole, and I'd like to do some more research as to how we would strike that and get it up and running.
Okay, so let's vote on this. Paul, if after your report, if I gave a 10-minute break, would that suffice, or would you need more time?
To be quite frank, I think I'll need some more time.
Okay. Okay then, well, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder then if perhaps for neatness, at least, if we do sever item number 4 from the report as a whole and consider separately, because if the resolution that's before us is the one that's written, I'm actually opposed to it because I don't want to make a recommendation.
I am as well, and that's sort of where I was going 10 minutes ago is, can I ask for, now that I've got a mover and seconder, Paul, can I ask for a mover and seconder to sever it?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So Councillor Donahue, are you willing to make that motion to sever number 4?
I am so willing, yes.
Excellent. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hunt, all in favor of severing number 4 from the report? Awesome. I will now entertain a motion to accept the administration report, please, as a whole, except for number 4. Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Any further discussion on items 1 through 3? All in favor? All right, that report is confirmed. It is in fact 10:39. I would love a cup of coffee, so if we could all come back at 10:50, please, that would be wonderful. I'm not sure if anybody else got the alerts. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all got a cup of coffee and a little stretch. At this time, we're going to go back to item number 4, which was severed from the administration report. And the matter at hand is the electronic meetings. So I would ask for a mover and seconder to withdraw the recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Hunt. And those were the two that moved and seconded the original recommendation. So at that, if there's no more discussion, I would call for the vote. All in favor to withdraw the motion. Thank you. And now I will entertain a mover and seconder. And Paul, what I will ask is that you read the recommendation that you would like to put forward.
Thank you, Chair. That the Finance and Administration Committee directs staff to send the suggested amendments to section 6.1 of the procedural bylaw to County Council for further consideration.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder on that recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Hunt, second by Councillor Brose. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that carries. That's great. Thank you. And so now I will turn this over to Director Foss for his departmental report. Take it away, Fossey.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, members of the Finance and Administration Committee. So my report begins on page 33 of your package. And the very first item, number 1, under information, it seems that retirement announcements are not exclusive to the social services, health, or D&P committees lately. And it certainly is with mixed emotions that we let you know that Ms. Marilyn Therens has provided her notice of retirement as well, effective April the 9th. And she was obviously the warm and friendly voice on the end of the phone when you call the IT department looking for some support. And so we wish her well. She has a tremendous number of plans for her retirement. But certainly she will be missed greatly here after 13 years with the IT department. Item number 2 is then a COVID-19 corporate financial summary report, and similar to the tables that I have prepared in throughout 2020, we now have I'm going to call it an unaudited summary of the COVID-19 position for the County of Renfrew. And I think it's probably worthwhile if I just ask you to turn to that appendix number 1, or on page 45 of your report, just to quickly touch on some of the highlights of the COVID-19 expenditures for our corporation in 2020. On the left side of the table, you'll see the departments listed, beginning with administration and ending with that of the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. And then moving toward the right, the very first column is, we call it additional payroll, which would be salary and benefits or compensation costs that were paid for each one of those departments. We designate these as incremental costs, so not part of our original 2020 budget, but added or extra costs specifically to deal with COVID-19. Within our payroll system, we tracked all of these costs with separate codes. So whether it was regular costs or sick costs or overtime costs, we tracked all of them with a separate code. And so we're quite able to report that to you. Obviously, we have all kinds of reporting responsibilities with each one of the ministries that require additional reporting on this data, which is all subject to audit by each one of the ministries. So we do have detailed transactional analysis for them to support all of these numbers. So in total, $2,985,000 spent on incremental payroll costs. The second column is very specific to the pandemic pay that was announced by the Ministry of Health, and only the Ministry of Health. So you are aware that we did receive a program notice by the Ministry of Health for long-term care employees, as well as for our paramedic employees, very much restricted to frontline workers, so not supervisors or managers were not able to participate in this $4 per hour premium. The premium codes carried various restrictions by the ministry, so we could not add these pay to their regular biweekly pay, simply because there was lots of deductions and other factors, that are embedded in the matrix, if you will, on calculating payroll. So we ran special pays. The very first $4 an hour pay, pandemic pay, had 4 different increments from April the 4th through to August the 13th, very specific timelines. Each one of those had to be sub-reported by monthly periods, and so had to deal with this on a tracking basis. So $1,802,000 in special pandemic pay. We also have included in that column the $3 per hour pandemic pay advised by the Ministry of Health, specific only to personal support workers in our long-term care homes. So the first tranche, if you will, October the 1st to December 31st, is also included in that column. And since then, the Ministry of Health has announced a January to March the 31st initiative, and a second to that April till June initiative of that personal support worker premium pay with respect to the pandemic. So there'll be more reporting of this taking place in the 2021 period. Early on in the pandemic, probably within the first day or two, we identified a separate general ledger code, so it could be attached to any department across the corporation, so that we could track all COVID-19 or pandemic related expenditures that were processed through accounts payable. And so there is the listing for you, totaling $4,034,000. I've also included in this chart, specific to our long-term care homes, was an announcement of a special program, infection prevention and control, to ensure that our homes had the adequate equipment resources or asset resources in order to deal with the infection control responsibilities specific to this pandemic. So Bonnechere Manor received $95,720. Miramichi Lodge received $92,164. And during our presentation to the Health Committee, we discussed this, as well as the items that were purchased for each one of those homes with this funding that was made available to them. So in total, $9,009,000 in pandemic-related expenses for the County of Renfrew in 2020. The majority of those expenses are covered off by either the first column of revenues, IPAC-related specific revenues, or under provincial revenues. These were program-related, so similar to what we received, the notifications we received by the Ministry of Health for long-term care, where on a monthly basis they would roll out very specific funding calculations for long-term care, some of them based a flat fee with an incremental per bed allowance. We did receive notification by the Ministry of Health for paramedic service, although it didn't come until January of 2021 that we would receive some funding support for paramedic services. We also received Social Services Relief Fund, provincial funds. It's very specific to deal with Welcome to the world of construction here
What
at
the heck was that?
7 and 9 International Drive. It's not woodpeckers or groundhogs. Yeah, we've got some construction going on. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, so $8,459,000 received in provincial revenues to offset the majority of the expenses that we incurred. The next column, I entitled it as Other Revenue. The very first one was within the Enterprise Renfrew County Department. And of course, we did have an announcement of a business development fund, which included participation by the city of Pembroke. So they agreed to support this fund, but with $50,000. And then we used $202,000 from the federal Safe Start program as our contribution toward the $250,000 business development fund activities to support struggling businesses throughout this pandemic. A little bit farther down on that same column, you'll see a number 459,151, and that's related to the Provincial Offences Court Administration. Once we review the financials in just a few minutes for the POA courts, you'll notice that, and we've talked about it just in number of charges with this committee, but a significant drop in fine revenues and fine charges experienced yet again in 2020. So one of the opportunities that we had was to support that loss, that revenue loss, by the federal Safe Start program itself. And so many of our peers who are responsible for POA courts are doing exactly the same thing. And certainly you may be aware of similar reductions in revenue for recreation programs, et cetera, et cetera. And so the guidelines allow us to not only pay for expenditures, operating costs, but also to offset operating revenue losses by utilizing the federal Safe Start Fund. And so what we did is we targeted that $459,000 in order to bring the POA department back to the 2020 budget in total for the county of Renfrew. So our revenue loss was even greater than that, but obviously we had offsetting expenditure reductions. And so the net amount that we needed to align the POA department actual results with the budgeted results was $459,000. And so the next column is the amount that we used of that federal Safe Start Fund. So there were two tranches that were announced. The first one was for $2,780,100. There was a second announcement of $557,000, a top up. It was announced late in December, but we did not receive those funds in 2020. So those funds are coming to us in 2021. So of the $2.78 million federal Safe Start, we have used $906,000. Our financial statements at the end of 2020 will recognize deferred revenue for an obligatory reserve because we were required to restrict these funds and roll them over into the 2021 period at the direction by the province of Ontario, who received this federal Safe Start support. So we will have carrying forward $1,873,000 in federal Safe Start money available to the corporation to offset any COVID-related costs in 2020. The final column, as discussed on a number of occasions with this committee, also during the budget workshop, we do not have any financial impact to the local ratepayers in the county of Renfrew through the property tax levy because of our exposure to COVID-19. So the $9 million of expenditures are all fully covered by either provincial revenue programs or the federal Safe Start program. I wonder, Madam Chair, with that, if there, before we leave this item, if there's any questions about the COVID-19 position.
I was just going to say that, thank you. So I'll just, let's just go back to information item number one. We'll take care of that. I know that all of us will wish Mary Lynn all the best in her retirement. She was fantastic to me when I was the warden, and I'm sure she will be greatly missed across the county of Renfrew. Anything further on one? All right, then while it's fresh in our brains, that very sobering report that it cost the county of Renfrew $9 million, well, through our income tax, $9 million to get through a year of a pandemic. That is a sobering number, to say the least. So I'll open it up to comments, questions, concerns. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Foss, a couple of questions. First, with respect to the POA, and I know that that issue is going to rear its head again later in the report. those revenues, are they, is it fair to suggest that they have been deferred because of the restriction on POA offenses being heard due to the COVID? Is it anticipated that certainly some of them may be recoverable, or a significant number of those fines may be recoverable once the POA courts return to normal, so to speak?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Chair. There is no question that there, and we'll deal with this later in the report as well, there is a overwhelming number, backlog, if you will, within our POA court, with the closure of the courts, if you will, the deferral of all matters. It seemed to be every month, throughout 2020, we received notification from the Ministry of the Attorney General that yet again we were deferring all of the matters before the POA courts on a regular basis. So 9 or 10 times we went through this process, but we begin now to deal with that particular backlog. This committee will be aware of the fact that from a revenue recognition point of view, we cannot book the revenue in the POA court as you would traditionally recognize revenue based on the transaction date of the fine. We only book the revenue based on the transaction date of the payment. And so we have no guarantee that these fines will be processed in a timely manner, and that they will result in charges and or payments for the county of Renfrew. One would hope, given the significant, and I think the drop was in excess of 20% yet again in 2020, that the revenue will come our way, but on a greatly deferred basis. However, it's very, very difficult for us to make any sort of judgment on where we will be with these deferred POA fines. As I said, you'll hear later on in the report today that we have incredible challenges from the judiciary, even for the number of courts that we are being allowed to move forward with. We have now lost our Renfrew court dates, our Killaloe court dates, and although it wasn't a tremendous number, even our Deep River court dates have been lost to us. And so they are only allowing us to move forward with our Pembroke once a week court date. And we expect the backlog to be incredible. So hopefully, sorry, I'm not sure if I really was able to answer the question directly, but that revenue loss may or may not be recovered for us in future periods. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Supplementary, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, through you, Mr. Foss absolutely did answer the question. Whether in their entirety or something less than that, much of that will be deferred, and certainly I look forward to the very serious discussion that must take place in the ensuing report vis-a-vis the POA courts. Following up on that, Mr. Foss had identified that there was a phase 2 of the Safe Restart. The total of the two amounts, Mr. Foss had identified $557K and 2.78, which is 3.3. So if that 906,500 is removed from that, it still leaves close to $2.5 million that is going to be available in 2021, and hopefully some of the dedicated COVID funding. My expectation is that the dedicated COVID funding would continue as well in those the social services and health at the very least. Just one question though, also, just in March, our municipality received word, now it's called something different, but I believe it's still derived from the federal Safe Restart funds in a letter from Minister Clark, and it was identified as COVID recovery funding for municipalities. And I know within Admast and Bromley, I think it was something on the order of 9K. I am curious if upper tier municipalities were also made eligible for that CRFM funding.
Mr. Foss.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, we did not receive a similar letter to that. Our last correspondence on anything dealing with kind of a generic or general support for COVID came on December the 16th, Municipal Affairs and Housing, and that was our federal Safe Start top-up, if you will, $557,000. That's the fund where they gave us a little bit of flexibility to not only spend it on operating expenses, but also to use it for minor capital purposes. And any unused funds would be transferred into a reserve come the end of the fiscal period. All of our other funding and notices, even up to and including SSRF, I think it's version 3 that my colleague Laura and Social Services are now dealing with at 1.6 million. All of the other funding we have are very specific program funding announcements. I should comment that, for example, paramedic services in 2020 received $2.9 million in restricted COVID-19 support. And we received a letter already this year indicating that for 2021, it's about $1 million is what they're willing to support us moving forward in 2021. There is no other indication that we will receive any additional funds for paramedic services on a go-forward basis. And so somewhat concerning, given the level of COVID-related activity that's taking place right now, that they have cut potentially that paramedic support by the province by 2/3 on a go-forward basis. So lots of things that are still up in the air. We are still anticipating that all of our programs will be directly supported. Our bigger programs, long-term care, paramedic services, social services, relief funds, but all of the other costs that we are incurring would have to be covered by the balance in that federal Safe Start program. Thank you.
Thank you. Follow up, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just finally, I am somewhat disconcerted that the county has not received notice, and perhaps this is something to follow up on. Just while Mr. Foss was responding, I pulled up the letter that I received on March 4th over Minister Clark's signature. I'll read to you from the second paragraph. I am pleased to inform you that the Government of Ontario has committed financial support to the Township of Admast and Brumley through the 2021 COVID-19 Recovery Funding for Municipalities program in order to support your COVID-19 operating costs and pressures. All municipalities in Ontario are eligible for this program, and the level of funding is based on the proportion of COVID-19 cases in the public health unit for your respective municipality during the period of January 1st, 2021 to February 18th, 2021. And for our particular municipality, it is $9,000. I am presuming that every one of the lower tier municipalities have received it. But I will once again reiterate that it does say all municipalities, not lower tier. So from that, I would suggest that all 440 municipalities are eligible. That perhaps it would be worthwhile for us to inquire of the ministry if there is funding for upper tier.
I think, though, that it was supposed to be per capita cases in the lower tiers. So the 444, not necessarily the 444 plus the counties plus the regions. I think that was the flavor of that.
It does say all municipalities.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe worth reaching out to MMAH.
If I might, then I don't know, Mr. Morrow, if that takes a resolution that correspondence be sent over the warden's signature inquiring.
My chair, if I may, just I think direction to staff to investigate would suffice.
So direct.
Okay.
Thank you for that. All right, is there anything further on COVID financial summary? All right, then we will move along to number 3, to the POA admin workload. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wonder, just before we left that last item, if Councillor Donahue might just, it seems to be he's reading from an email. If he wouldn't mind flipping that to me, and I'll use that document to follow up with Municipal Affairs to see if there's maybe something that we missed in the, thank you very much.
I'm sure he can do that for you.
So back to the original report. Go back a couple of pages myself. Item number 3 is Provincial Offences Administration workload statistics. So we are dating that chart back to November and carrying it forward to the month of March. And you will note a dramatic change in the activity level for charges received in the month of March when compared to February, January, and the previous month. So almost a doubling of those charges. At that level, we return to about 10,000 charges per year, which is probably somewhat similar to our pre-COVID experience, if you will. Item number 4, Madam Chair, is the unaudited 2020 financial statements, and I have attached as Appendix 2 the entirety of the financial statements. Other committees earlier this week have already dealt with the receipt of these statements for all of the departments that are reporting up through and to their various committees. And so now for Finance and Administration, given sort of the overall financial coordination responsibilities this committee has, I've included all of the statements here, but would like to speak directly to those departments that are reporting directly to this committee. So if you will, Madam Chair, perhaps I would turn our attention to page 46 of the package, which begins that discussion of the unaudited statements.
That would be perfect, because I think once we get to County Council, if there are questions over and above our particular faculty, those questions can be asked then.
So page number 46 is a rather brief summary page. And all I've done is I've grabbed the bottom line, if you will, from the variety of financial reports that are coming forward to all of the committees. This summary is really intended to provide you with the reconciliation that's required for you to understand our municipal surplus, which is the surplus that is created based on the budgets that we bring forward to you on an annual basis. And then at the bottom line, the Public Sector Accounting Board defined, or the annual audited financial statements. And so there is a number of items that we would include, and I suspect many of your municipalities include within the reports that you receive locally and in the reports that we generate, that includes a whole bunch of items that have nothing to do with statements of operating activities or income statements, if you will. Under PSAB format, you cannot include capital items, you cannot include transfers to and from reserves. We talk a little bit about temporary loan or debt principal, because we need to understand those things in the setting of our municipal levies, but all of those items have to be removed when we report annual audited financial statements. And so this reconciliation is there simply to let you know that the general fund, Miramichi Lodge, Bonnechere Manor, and Housing Corporation have a municipal surplus that's coming forward of $5.5 million. But when we receive the external auditor's report in the month of June, on a corporate consolidated basis, you will see County of Renfrew surplus of $18,344,000 in PSAB format. And so, as I mentioned earlier this week, Miramichi Lodge, Bonnechere Manor, and the Renfrew County Housing Corporation financial statements were reported to those committees, and we certainly explained to them the source and nature of where those surpluses were coming from. Our concentration today is on the general revenue fund, if you will, that $2,090,000 surplus. So the very next page, page 47, is that summary of the municipal levy that was budgeted for each one of those departments in those committees, as well as the municipal levy that was used by each one of those departments in those committees. So for operations, only one department, Public Works, the surplus generated within the operations department, $1,281,000. Next, development and property, a variety of departments at $256,000 surplus. Next to that, health committee at $90,472,000 surplus, and then social services at $345,000 surplus. So our goal now today is to review the departments that begin with members of council and include general admin, IT, HR, provincial offenses, property assessment, MPAC, as well as our financial expense and our other revenue categories. And so I would begin that discussion with you today. The next page, page number 48, is where we would begin to have a look at members of council. And you will note that members of council have a municipal levy surplus of $193,000. That really wouldn't be much of a surprise to anybody on the call today because of the restrictions related to COVID-19 and the pandemic. There was very little activity that took place with council conventions unless they could be dealt with virtually, council mileage, council ad hoc meetings, AMO board expenses, FCM board expenses, hospitality costs. And the big budget that we created to begin 2020 was that $65,000 budget for advocacy and delegations, of which we only spent $744. Obviously, COVID-19 would be the reason behind all of those surplus, all of those savings, if you will. And so that's really what's driving this particular area. Directly below council, our members of council budget is general administration. That's a surplus of $155,000. And three things I'd really bring your attention to. Actually, four things. You'll see in the actual result column, about 6 or 7 lines down, COVID-related expenses of $19,514. And then 5 or 6 lines below that, a provincial revenue one-time credit or revenue share of $19,514. And that would be the same information that I've just presented to you in our COVID chart, where our expenditures are coming from and the source of the revenue to support that. But in all situations, the revenue is offsetting the expenditures, and there is no municipal levy cost related to COVID-19 in any of these financial statements. So in addition to that, we have salary savings of about $66,000 and benefits of about $20,000. That, of course, is directly related to the position of the financial services officer, the former financial services officer, which is now the accounting manager. That position was budgeted to be hired in the first quarter of the year. And of course, with the pandemic and all those related activities, that position did not begin, or Daniel Burke, our accounting manager, did not start until October. And so that is reflected in those savings. In addition to that, under special projects related to the strategic plan, we had $30,000 in that budget line item. That was for moving council's strategic goal of a new information technology strategy or roadmap, moving that project forward. And we deferred that project because of the announcement of the Municipal Modernization Fund through MMAH, and we have applied for funding with respect to that digital technology strategy document. We have not heard about the results of that as yet, but as you're all aware, if you've spent money on projects, they are disqualified from the application process. And so we are waiting to hear news from MMAH on our success in dealing with that program. The next department then that's reporting directly through this committee would be information technology. And I think you find that on page number 51. Information technology is reporting a $59,000 surplus, and that's being driven by the top line item, which is annual software maintenance fees. That $27,000 is directly related to two projects which did not move forward. There is a cloud backup project at $15,000 that was deferred because of our reshuffling, if you will, of our priorities within the IT department of getting all of our staff working remotely with virtual private networks, etc. We were also looking at potentially transitioning from our help desk software to a new product, and that did not move forward as well. And we have a great opportunity to look at that afresh and anew, in that our Marilyn Therens, who was really managing that piece of software for us, is now retired. And so we will look at that whole new process in 2021 from a fresh perspective. In addition to that, computer technology supplies were under budget by about 7. Of course, professional development did not go ahead. We always have a budget of $10,000 for purchase services. That is specific to external consultants that we potentially would use on an annual basis if we get into a situation that is above and beyond the capacity and the expertise of our staff to deal with it. And given that there was $0 spent in 2020, we did not have to utilize any external services. And of course, the last line item of that department, travel costs were down by $3,600, and that was directly related to a stop in activities related to COVID-19. Human Resources Department would be next, and you'll see that that's $327,000 above budget, and all of the reference would be directing your attention to our legal cost line, and that was the primary source of that going over budget. I'd now ask you to drop all the way down to page 57 of your report to look at the Provincial Offences Department. The POA department had that bracket number from a budget point of view, $560,264 is net revenue that we anticipate to earn from all of the charges that are paid for, less all of the costs involved in managing the POA office. And shockingly, the actual results came in right at $560,264. And as I mentioned, during our COVID-related activities, we did utilize $462,459 of the federal Safe Start Fund in order to ensure that the net county surplus from this department was exactly equal to budget. Next to that, of course, is MPAC and property assessment. And because we did receive their notification prior to adopting the budget, we knew exactly what our payments would be to MPAC at $1,555,448. Financial expenses, 2 items just to talk to you about. The county share of taxes written off. This is from notifications that we receive from each of your local treasurers. We share in your write-offs in the same proportion as we share in collecting the tax revenue from each property ratepayer. And we estimate on an annual basis, that's about $300,000 per year. And this year it came in at $222,481. The next line item is our transfer to reserves. It came in exactly on budget, other than the $3,353,044. That was the carryover from the doubling of the gas tax that we received in 2019. And all of that fund was used in 2020 for gas tax projects that we had planned. We used just a little bit more than $6 million in total gas tax funds to work on almost $7 million worth of projects in the Public Works Department in the year 2020. And then finally, just below that in the revenue section, you can see we had some supplementary revenue at $450,000. We estimate or budget about $500,000 a year. Again, the upper tier shares proportionately in the supplementary bills that are sent out from each of the lower tiers in the same proportion as we share the entire tax collected for that property. And so that's notifications that we receive from each of the lower tier municipalities. Interest revenue was about $34,000 above our target of $700,000 for the year. And as I indicated, we brought in $3,353,000 of deferred revenue from 2019 in order to support our gas tax projects for the year. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm really at the end of my summary for those departments reporting through to this committee, and would be happy to perhaps answer some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Foss. I'll just go back. Are there any questions on the POA administration workload? Number 3. Although I think we can probably address this in the financial statements, but were there any questions? All right, then while it's fresh in our brains, let's talk about the unaudited 2020 financials. Questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Foss. Just for, not for today, for the calculation, but I'm just wondering if for County Council, if there are several pages citing the reserves, transfers to reserve or surpluses at the end of each year, at the end of various departments. There's the general fund, Miramichi Lodge, Monash Manor, Renfrew County Housing. I'm wondering if that could also be consolidated or a separate page to consolidate what the impact on the TCR, not the TCA, but the capital reserves is at closing of 2020.
That would be very helpful. Could that be done for County Council?
And through you, Chair, absolutely. In a summary format, it's something that I would have, and I'd be easy to share with all of County Council. So we'll add that to the report. Each one of our various different funds also contains that information, but it's not in that summary form that I think Councillor Donahue is looking for. So for example, for the General Revenue Fund on page 60, you will see a reconciliation of our accumulated surplus for that particular fund, where we highlight the investments in fixed assets, less our liabilities for long-term debt, and then of course all of the reserve funds and the transactions in and out of those funds, including even the apportionment of the interest revenue, are highlight on those particular pages. But very easy to simply bring that forward on a consolidated basis, and we'd indicate then which are operating reserves and then which are capital reserves. Yeah.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Donahue, supplementary.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Foss. Yeah, Mr. Foss is absolutely correct. I was thinking in the format that we review the schedule of reserves at budget, so that there could be a side-by-side comparison. The only question I had, and it wasn't particular to finance and admin, and I will certainly defer anything that's outside of that generally to council itself. But I note within the trails a significant variance on trail donations. I'm presuming is that due to the next tranche of transfer not having occurred?
I believe it is, but I will toss it over to Jeff or Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I can take that one, Madam Chair. And we do have the final transfer for the CP Rail to the County of Renfrew. And the plan for that in 2020 was to receive the entire final transfer with a donated asset value of $6.7 million. And that would bring us to the end of the full transfer. And you can see about 10% of that is what actually came to us with some activities that took place in the fall of 2020 at $611,000 worth of donated asset value. So we still have about 6.1 million that needs to come across to us. As I understand it from the folks in the Trails Department, these include some of the more complicated land transfer issues that have some history related to them. And so there are our legal counsel as well as that in representing CP are continuing to work through the quagmire, if you will, of land transfers to transfer all of the trail to us. I would like to suggest that yet again it will happen in 2021. However, might be accused of being a bit of a broken record on this one, and I've said that once or twice before, and here we are with about 10% of it coming across. So we can live in hope.
We still trust you, Jeff. Councillor Hunt, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Foss, a couple questions, and I don't know if they really belong here, and if they don't, you could tell me when I should be bringing them up. But the first question, which I think belongs here, is the unallocated $300,000, was that used towards building or COVID? Where was that money used?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So we had a council resolution that we would invest our $300,000 provision for unallocated funds and use that toward the business development fund. And so there was an initial resolution that took place that's where our share of the business development fund to support businesses struggling with COVID-19 would come from. However, when the federal Safe Start money came along, we had a supplementary resolution adopted by council that directed staff to use federal Safe Start money to support the business development fund, and then to reinvest that $300,000 provision for unallocated toward the service delivery improvement project, the renovations, and specifically to add those dollars into the fund to offset the budget for renovating county council chambers.
Okay.
And so one of our revenue streams, or one of our financing streams for the SDIP project now includes this $300,000 provision for unallocated. And we have this, I'm going to call it a change order, if you will, to that original budget of $300,000 to deal with council chambers. And so as long as it comes in on budget, it is fully funded by the provision for unallocated funds.
Okay, thank you. And so the other items I wish to speak about, I don't know if they belong here or not, but you could let me know when I could bring them up. If not, I'm just wondering, like items like advocacy, special events, the unallocated, and in operations, we have winter storm. And I see these items coming up year after year. And if you take unallocated and go back 10 years, there's probably 2 or 3 of the years that the money was used, and in the other years it just goes into a surplus. Is there an opportunity with for us to look at that, or to discuss of building this fund, and then we wouldn't have to be budgeting it once we have the fund built, and say unallocated, if we thought we should have $1 million, then we're not dealing with it every year and just have it flow into surplus. And the same with winter storms, like how much should it be? Should it be $750,000? If we have a surplus, build it up. Advocacy, how much money we should have. And then we would only have to deal with it after it is used. So if you pull down advocacy in the year of 50,000 and we want it to be 100, we put that back in. because I see some of these items coming year after year, and this year in 2021, we increased our budget for winter storms, winter maintenance, which I personally believe will not be required, but that's remains to be seen. But if we have this group, we don't have to deal, you know, if we have this budgeted amount as a reserve, we only have to deal with it when it's used. So where would be the spot for us to have a healthy discussion on that?
Brian, I would think that because we're invoking a department that doesn't really flow through this particular committee, if you could defer those questions until county council, I think that would be probably the proper place for them, so that others.
Okay, but unallocated is this department, and it's $300,000.
That's true. The one thing I was going to touch on was you did bring up advocacy, which is part of this committee. And I completely understand what you're saying. Like year over year, if we're budgeting, now this year we didn't budget as much for 2021, but if we're budgeting those amounts, then when there is a surplus, then wouldn't it be nice if that went into its own reserve so that we didn't have to budget year over year? Because we know advocacy is becoming far more expensive than it had traditionally. You know, when we're flying to Toronto and we're driving to Ottawa and we're spending far more time, you know, trying to meet with our provincial and federal partners. We do understand that maybe should be its own reserve, but I will leave it open to what the group thinks. Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I absolutely agree with your approach or your comments on this. I just think it's a challenging year to have this conversation in that there are not the normal expenditure patterns that we have seen in the past. In any other given year, we would be using those dollars for advocacy and, you know, traveling, like you say, to Toronto. So we would be putting in the budget on an annual basis and replenishing them. So in terms of I understand the concept that Councillor Hunt is trying to convey, but with some of them, they would be in a normal year fully utilized and need to be budgeted and replenished on an annual basis. And I mean, I'll turn it over to Jeff if he has further comments.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and through you, Chair. The only comment about advocacy, I think, is that for 2020, that was brand new for us. And that I think council recognized the importance of delegations and advocacy efforts to have our councillors appearing at Roma and AMO and a variety of the other conferences, and that we didn't want to include those costs in on their conference costs because council of the corporation was asking them to attend. And so that was a brand new initiative that this council took. However, it didn't get off the ground in 2020 because everything stalled with COVID. So certainly that's you know, I think there would be a desire of council to get back to that once the opportunity post-pandemic presents itself. The other one with respect to provision for unallocated, which is $300,000 per year. I know as long as I've been here and prior to my time, we currently have a budget, a corporate consolidated budget of $150 million. Our only non-budgeted item where we don't have projects attached to it was the provision for unallocated funds. So it's $300,000. I don't think it's changed in the last 20 years. It's always stayed at that level. And, you know, so if something arises, we have an opportunity to pull dollars from reserve to deal with an unexpected situation, or we have $300,000, you know, that's not tagged to any other project. So for an organization our size, I think previous councils felt that it was wise to have at least some wiggle room on some of these unexpected events that would happen. So we had some dollars available to us. But from a how do we handle that in the future going forward? We have a 2021 approved county council budget, which includes a $300,000 provision for unallocated. I think for budget 2022, if council felt that's not what you wanted to do, or if you wanted to kind of create a new reserve and set some money aside for miscellaneous things, that would certainly be within, that might be the best time for council to address that, given that we already have an approved council budget for 21. Thank you.
That's a good point. And I will add on to that, is that, it came to light that Mayor Sweet was not planning on attending AMO one year, but then was called upon to go to AMO anyway, to be part of a delegation. I'm assuming it had to do with County Road 51. And I think that, if you're not planning to go to a conference, but then you're called upon to travel and perhaps stay overnight, then by all means, should that count towards your conference budget? No, it shouldn't. And I think that's why that advocacy fund was stood up. I saw Councillor Hunt had a supplementary, and then I'll go to Councillor Donahue.
Yes, thank you. I fully agree that we should have these accounts. But this has been on my mind for a year at least, that where could we have the discussion whether they should be a reserve that's replenished as used, or an annual budget item. And so I guess what I'm asking is, where would be the proper time to have that? I recognize our budgets are set, but at some point, if we could just address it and say, yes, it's the right thing to do to go with the way we have been doing it in the past, or should we consider a reserve? And we would look at each department, and if I use operations, then I talk about the winter storm. I feel that should be a budget, but anyway, so I guess I'm saying, where would we be able to have this discussion? Because I went through all of last year and I couldn't see the opportunity to bring it up.
Would it be, Paul, I'll let Paul speak to this, but would it be, say, an agenda item for an F&A meeting down the road? Sorry, did I?
No, Chair, that's fine. No, everyone heard you. That was fine.
Okay, sorry, my internet is unstable again.
Oh, and I was going to, I'm just hesitating because I was going to say something very similar. And the question would be is, and I'm looking at Jeff a little bit when I do this, in terms of approach and budgeting process, and I agree with Jeff, if this were to be done, it would be done for the 2022 budget. But the direction to staff I would be looking for is at a future meeting that staff would bring back the pros and cons with respect to having these particular items and the items that Councillor Hunt listed, whether they be addressed through the creation of a reserve account, or whether we continue to budget for them on an annual basis. And I think that's the question being asked.
Okay.
But we would like at the staff level to do some investigation and be able to provide council with an informed opinion and position back on this particular matter.
I think that works perfectly. So Paul, all you need is staff direction?
That would be correct, ma'am.
Okay. I think that would be wonderful, perhaps prior to your SLT beginning their budgets, so perhaps in August.
So we would have that direction from council in advance. Okay, so August, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Donahue. Sorry guys, both myself and Glenn are having some pretty bad internet issues here, so bear with us. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just picking up on this, I certainly endorse the funding that was set aside that we now have. We are allocating a budget towards advocacy. I think certainly many initiatives, as everyone is quite aware, the conversion from the local health integration networks to the Ontario health teams, The county has certainly weighed in with respect to the development of this new structure for the delivery of health, given the role in long-term care and paramedic services. Likewise, the role for County Road 51, which is to engage the senior levels of government for funding. These are initiatives that are going to require dedicated funding. So I'm certainly in support of that. With respect to the provision for unallocated, certainly the 2020 and 2021 are somewhat unprecedented. I have no information on what the County Council of 1918, 1919 may have dealt with. Perhaps they had similar experience, but it is certainly making use, and I anticipate in 2021 we will likely make use of the provision for unallocated as well. The experience, certainly since I've sat in these chambers, whether the virtual chamber or the actual chamber, has been that there is a small part of that $300,000 has generally been allocated specifically in a given year, though it has happened. It has been my position that that should be treated as a reserve, whether a reserve account set up for it, but set apart from the standing policy whereby unspent funds are transferred to reserves. I think it is appropriate that the provision for unallocated only be restocked to the appropriate level that council decides that it may be. The other thing that I would certainly bring forward once again is that also in my experience in sitting in these chambers, there's been a surplus each and every year that has been substantial. I'm not sure it's been less than $2 million. So as Mr. Foss has quite correctly suggested, $300,000 out of a $150 million budget for unallocated is a fairly small component, but in fact, the surplus that's been generated each and every year has substantially been in excess of that $300,000. It's probably more on the order of about 4%, 4 to 5% even, I would suggest on average. But that certainly has been my position with the unallocated. I would suggest that the same could be true likewise of a winter control reserve, that it be treated as something that just needs to be replenished until it's full and not drained. I'm presuming the winter control reserve is not, but the unallocated fund is. Those funds are transferred to the working capital reserve at the conclusion of each year if they are unspent.
Okay, is there anything further on item number 4? Okay, so can I get a thumbs up for staff direction for Mr. Morrow to bring back pros and cons, say at our August F&A meeting? Is everybody okay with that? Awesome sauce. All right. It is 3 minutes to noon, and we do have a little more to get through here. Do you want to take a half-hour lunch break, or would you like to push on through?
I have a 1 o'clock and a 2 o'clock meeting today, so I'm ready to push on. But if not, and if you go past 1 o'clock, will have to leave, Jen.
Okay, no worries. I have a 2 o'clock. Well, I don't. Michael wants 10 minutes. Oh, you don't? You want to push on? Well, don't do this. Do this. Okay. All right. We will move ahead. I will mute if my stomach starts growling. I need some lunch, but I will have some when we're done, guys. All right, Mr. Foss, take it away. We're going to number 5. Please unpack. Everybody's favorite subject right now.
Thank you, Chair. So at our March session, I think of committee, also County Council, we talked a bit about MPAC and a response to a letter that we had sent to them. And there was certainly some confusion at that time about what was MPAC's plan for the future. And so we have received some notification where some of this is clarified. Property assessments for the 2022 tax year will continue to be based on January 1, 2016 assessed values. So again, that phase in was to be a 4-year phase in. And in 2020, we were to have an updated assessment roll that would be phased in for another 4 years. Because of COVID, that assessed change did not happen in 2021, nor will it happen in 2022. And all we have been told, and regardless of our efforts at knocking on MPAC's door, is that the provincial government will hold consultations on the timing and valuation date for the next assessment, and we will be told this fall what those decisions will be. So stay tuned. There is more to follow with respect to MPAC, but the market turmoil which is taking place across Ontario right now will not impact us for 2022. We will continue with the 2016 value, which has already been phased in. So there will be zero reassessment impact in 2022, exactly what happened in 2021. So for your information. Item number 6, of course, we're all aware of the provincial budget for 2021, and MFOA had done a pretty good job of summarizing some of that rather large document and its impact for municipalities in Ontario. And so I leave that with you as attached as Appendix 3. Item number 4, AMO, some updates and some good news from AMO, in that the federal government has renamed its gas tax fund to a Canada Community Building Fund and has increased this by $2.2 billion for 2021, helping communities prepare for economic recovery and the pandemic. What that means for us is that we will receive, in addition to our gas tax that we have budgeted for, of $2,793,000, we will receive a top-up one-time 2021 only of $2,685,199, and of course we will automatically receive that money and place it into the gas tax reserve, which I'm now going to have to call the Canada Community Building Reserve, to be with council to direct what we do with that money at some future point in time. But when it comes, that would be staff's handling of those dollars until council decides how we should move forward with it. And with that, Madam Chair, I am ready to move forward with resolutions.
Okay, let's just deal with the rest of your information items because we've sort of been doing them as we went along, Jeff. So bear with me here. So number 5, MPAC. This is going to be a disaster. That's all I have to say. It's going to be an unmitigated disaster. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps Mr. Foss and the warden can just change the date on that letter that we sent, what, about a month ago, 2 months ago, and we'll send it again, maybe send it every couple of months.
I'm all over that. Warden, are you okay with that?
Just keep sending the same letter? Is that what you're suggesting I do? Or are you being facetious?
I thought I was, but I'm warming to the idea, actually.
I thought it was a bit of both.
Not perhaps monthly, but I do question Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. From that, one is to deduce that the core operation is assessments. Since for the quaternary assessments, this will be now twice deferred. Presumably, like any business, that larger effort that is required on a bi-quarterly, I'm saying it wrong, but every 4 years. It would seem to me, and not having done it in 2020 and not doing it in 2021, I would expect some relief from the expenditures that MPAC is undertaking towards developing nothing for us with respect to the province-wide assessment.
Well, perhaps we could wait until Mr. Foss indicated we're going to get some kind of information in the fall. Maybe we can wait until that information and respond at that time, if that would work.
I will absolutely defer to that.
Yeah, I think that when you think about MPAC's budget, I would think that the majority of that would be, you know, the administration going out, assessing properties, coming back, writing property assessments, sending them out. So if they're not doing them, then where is the savings to the municipalities? Yeah, I find that very, very, very frustrating. So, all right, yeah, we'll wait until the fall and see what happens. Anything further on 5? Number 6, MFOA. Councillor Bros, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just something, again, I wanted to bring to committee's attention, and maybe even it requires all of County Council for discussion. But when I went through this budget, and 2 items that popped out at me, where the OPP is looking at putting in money to have a mental health worker in the comm centers, so that they can refer and help people find access to mental health services. Once again, I think it brings us back. They're also putting 8.4 million for crisis call diversion program over 3 years. To me, again, it speaks to our community safety and well-being plans, which the province requires all lower tier municipalities to do. Yet we as lower tiers just don't have the staff or resources to fully implement some of these programs. And again, here I'm seeing where the OPP realizes that there's an issue that they need to address in getting people to the proper services. I also know that, especially through my community services department, the amount of collaboration that already goes on between community services in regards to referrals, whether it's mental health, whether it's housing, whether it's Ontario Works, education development, human trafficking. They're already doing so much of these same services that our community safety and well-being plans require. And I know policing isn't a county responsibility, but there certainly is a lot of the responsibility that the county's already doing. And so what's the best way to approach this, especially when we are all, every one of our local departments, OPP departments, utilize these same services? To me, there has to be a better way and a more cost-effective way to approach this than what's being presented to us as lower tier municipalities.
Thank you so much for that, Councillor Bros. You've sort of spoken to why my municipality is not willing to put in the time, effort, or money to do a community safety and well-being plan at this time. I think that the province is realizing that, you know, more and more we are having some serious mental health issues, and have in fact included some resources in this budget for exactly that. What our role in this is, I still cannot comprehend. So I really appreciate your comments. Is there anything further on MFOA? Yes, Councillor Bros, supplementary.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, as I say, does it warrant a more wholesome discussion at County Council? Or do we just muddle through this, develop our community safety and well-being plans, and continue doing what we're doing, which is meaning that the county still handles a lot of this, a lot of these calls, a lot of this direction of the traffic, so people get the services that they really need. I'd like to explore it further, especially when we talk about efficiencies and modernization funding and so on. To me, this is a huge responsibility financially for lower tiers, and I don't see how it's productive or efficient.
Agreed. Yeah, I think if the warden will allow a more comprehensive discussion at County Council amongst all 17 of us, I think that would certainly send a message to the province and sort of lay out what we in Renfrew County are willing to do. If that, yes, Warden.
Thank you, Chair. So you know, if county councillors want to discuss this issue, I'm certainly, you know, more than happy to have it occur. I just think that we have to really think about what really is the county's involvement in some of these organizations. Yes, we have staff that sit at various tables, but we're not necessarily the service deliverer of many of these services. And I think my position on the community safety and wellbeing plans has always been that as a municipality, we don't provide those services. Those services are provided countywide by a lot of organizations that are funded to provide countywide services. They're not necessarily services that are provided by the county of Renfrew. So, you know, we can certainly have the conversation, but I think it needs to be fairly, I want to clear in my mind exactly what we're discussing and what the goal of the discussion would be. And I know that Councillor Brose is extremely passionate about this. I heard it yesterday and I heard it today, and I think I heard it last month and possibly the month before that as well. So he certainly is committed to it, to assisting people. I'm just not sure that it's a lower tier or a municipal upper tier responsibility. I think it's a community safety issue, and that to me lies with the police service. Thank you.
And I think you nailed it, Warden. I think that's what Councillor Brose is saying, is that if we could just have a quick discussion about this particular item at County Council, so that all of the lower tiers understand what's in this budget and what's being proposed through the OPP for mental health at the comm center and that kind of thing. I think that would serve all 17 of us very well if we're not aware that these items are in the budget. And so I think that if you would allow just a quick, you are obviously on the same page that I'm on. I do not believe that these CSWBs are the responsibility of the lower tiers. I don't think they're the responsibility of the upper tiers. I believe they are an OPP and province responsibility. And I think by shoving them down onto the lower tiers, they're actually having us sort of reinvent the wheel and have caused more confusion. Yes, Warden.
Thank you. So just to add to that, I'm not so, yeah, you and I may be on the right page, on the same page, but I would have to tell you that I don't believe all 17 of us are on this page. So Mr. Morrow, is this something that Councillor Brose could bring up under new business? Because I think that's probably where it needs to go.
Yes, ma'am, there could be a discussion under new business. However, any further direction then resulting from that would need to follow our procedural bylaw with notices of motion, should council decide to take us down a certain direction. So council would have appropriate amount of time to consider that direction and again, comment back on the specific direction. Thank you, ma'am.
Can we not just bring it up during this information item instead of new business?
It could go under chair through you to committee. It could come up as part of this conversation, but again, any direction would need to follow that process.
All right, so I'll throw it back to James. What is your preference, James?
I would prefer to bring it up under new business. Would that have to wait until next month's county council, or could it make it onto this month?
You could speak to it this month, but what I think Paul is saying is that it wouldn't allow for discussion unless you did a notice of motion or a member's written motion.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
Warden.
We not, so if a council brings something up under new business, there cannot be any discussion about it? I thought there could be discussion, but no resolution or no motion or position taken at that point.
Chair, through you to the warden, if I may. That is exactly, the warden has probably better articulated what I was trying to say. She's exactly right. The conversation can occur, but then following that, When we better understand the direction, then we would need to follow our process with a notice of motion.
Yeah, there could be no action. Sorry. It's low blood sugar, guys. All right, so that sounds good. Is there anything else on that 2021 budget summary? All right, moving on. Number 7, AMO. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Foss, just for clarity, it was my understanding in reading some of the background information, now perhaps that has happened. This is subject to the adoption of the legislation at the federal government level. Has that been done? Is there certainty on this having passed through the House of Commons?
Through you, Chair, the only documentation that I have is the notification March 26th through AMO with the list of municipalities and what we could anticipate receiving of the top up, but I have no further information on whether or not this has received assent at the federal government level to release those funds. But certainly, if we receive any other correspondence, we'll bring those back to this committee as well.
And just to follow up, we got an AMO bulletin this morning and there was nothing in it about this. So I would assume that when they send out their blasts, they'll let us know when this is official. Councillor Hunt, did I see your hand up, sir?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Jeff, the dollars that the county gets, is it a summation of the individual municipalities? Like, do you get one-for-one dollars, the total up to the total of the municipalities?
And through you, Chair, yeah, I believe this calculation is population based. So,
so it would actually be that then.
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's population based. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's the way they like to give stuff out, population based. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
It is, I can confirm that it is population based. Probably everyone will recall in 2018, or certainly from my perspective, my own municipality grew, but it grew at a lesser pace than the nation as a whole. So our allocation out of the federal gas tax funds actually diminished that year. But once it is reconciled with the population growth from that year forward, it is indexed as well.
Thank you. All right, anything further on AMO bulletin? Councillor Sweet, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm ever the optimist that it will, as Councillor Donahue said, be approved by the federal government and it will flow to municipalities. Over the years, traditionally, the gasoline tax has gone to roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. However, and I don't have the criteria for this particular situation. This is a bit of a windfall for the county of Renfrew. And I'm wondering, given that it hopefully will be approved, if there's an opportunity for staff to take a look at this. I think there's a need right across all departments within the county of Renfrew. There's never enough money to do what we all need to do. And I'm wondering if we could ask staff to take a look at this, if the criteria is broad enough to allow money to be spent in other areas within the county of Renfrew, to perhaps come back with a report asking or telling us these are some options that you might want to consider if in fact it can be used in other areas rather than not. I know Mr. Perkins would put a rope around this and just take it and it would go into the gasoline tax. I get that. But I think I heard Jeff saying that a decision would be made by county council as to how this money would be allocated or where it would be spent. I was wondering if there's an opportunity, Chair, to have staff take a look at that through their senior leadership team. They have a bigger picture than, say, we do here, and maybe make some recommendations coming forward within the criteria of the program.
Thank you, Councillor Sweet. Actually, I wondered when they renamed it the Canada Community Building Fund, I wondered if perhaps that meant that it could be used across different faculties, not only infrastructure. So I would say when the criteria comes out and when we know that we're going to get the money, let's not spend any staff time until we know for sure. But definitely that would be something that perhaps Paul and his senior leadership team could look into. You know, is there an opportunity here in community services to use some of it, or, you know, is it all going to be infrastructure, much like the gas tax was? So I think that's an excellent suggestion. Warden, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I'm taking it down now. It's okay.
Oh, okay. The warden is retracting her hand up. All right. Is there anything else on this? Excellent. All right, Jeff, let's move along to resolutions then, please.
Thank you, Chair. So item number 8 then begins the resolutions, and I will read the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends that the incident report prepared by the POA Department for the County of Renfrew be sent to the Ministry of the Attorney General, and further, that a letter requesting additional court dates be sent from the warden to the Regional Senior Justice of the Peace presiding over the County of Renfrew. I'll just, Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I'll just, I have very few comments to make with respect to this particular issue, but we do have Ms. Jeanette Poole, our POA manager, with us this morning. Suffice to say that POA staff are extremely concerned about the massive backlog of court matters, primarily due to or begun with the COVID-19 shutdown. The scary documentation is that at our current rate of clearing this backlog, we would take us a minimum of 19 months to get through to a position where we were prior to the COVID situation. There's a number of factors that are leading toward that, not the least of which is that we have been short 2 justices of the peace for a number of years. In fact, we do not have any local justice of this peace serving the County of Renfrew, and that they are brought in from various other areas in order to provide those services to the residents of Renfrew County. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, with respect to the financial results for the POA court, we have lost all of our dates for the Renfrew location, Killaloe, and Deep River, and we are only moving forward with the Pembroke court dates, and the dockets are plugged full, like we've never seen before. So I think with that, Madam Chair, I would ask if you would allow Ms. Poole to speak to this and the seriousness of the situation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Welcome, Jeanette. I can't even imagine what your department is going through at this time. It must be crazy there. So yes, if you'd like to speak to the Finance and Admin Committee about what you're experiencing, I think that this is a very important resolution to be forwarding to the AG. So you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the committee. One thing I'll mention right away is whenever they do recruit a justice of the peace, it takes a minimum of 1 year before they can sit in court. So with having 5 justices of the peace short, it will take us a minimum of 1 year to 2 years before even being at par for all of our justices of the peace in the East region. So that's a large concern. Also, whenever you look at the amounts, I was reading the Memorandum of Understanding, and there are different sections that we're to follow that we shall be thinking about. And I'll just go through them quickly. One of them is the modern efficiency justice system, and it's to put in place most modern, efficient, and effective justice system attainable, which we haven't seen yet. Another section is the municipal partners accountability. So the municipal partner is accountable to the public who are receiving court services. So we're not meeting that one either. Another one is public confidence in justice system. Open access to the system and a fair and a timely process must be assured. So with all this backlog, it could come a time that we're going to lose jurisdiction and these cases won't proceed because of the Charter of Rights and the timeline that it's taking for it to come to court for a trial. So that's a big issue regarding the fairness and the timeliness of prosecution. So that is a huge, huge issue that may come up. We could have started earlier, but we had to wait for a royal assent because we are an informal early resolution court. So we weren't entitled to start July 5th, 2020 to start registering convictions and pleas. So finally in September, the royal assent went through, and then we began and we started our courts in October 5th for guilty pleas. So that's been helping relieving some of the backlog of the part one's informations that come in for trial, but they are now again backlogged again. So we just go one step forward and we go 10 back. And then the part three informations, which are the more serious informations, we just started in December bringing those in court again. Now for the courts to have trials, we were required to have a Zoom platform, which took them a long time to decide what platform to use. So it put all the courts behind in purchasing the Zoom system and making sure the security is all in place and everything is in place. And then we will be starting on May 3rd, our first Zoom court, so we can begin starting trials. And now, because it's virtual, the trials will take a bit long. It will take longer process, so you can't put too many in a one day. So this will be a large issue. And if the people don't show up, well, we've lost that time. So it's going to take a lot of good scheduling to balance everything out. Our last court on April 12th, we had over 260 matters on, and they didn't finish till 5 o'clock that night. And they didn't have a lunch. And these matters are just moving forward, and we don't have any extra court dates. Our last available dates we have so far is at the end of June. So we have 4 per month, and we did lose 2 to 3 courts per month. So this is really difficult to try and balance all of the information that's needs to go through court, including what's coming in new. So you may have 20, 30 new matters that are coming up that there's summons for. So we have to balance with all of that. And we don't know in advance when an officer is going to summon someone in court. So our courts are very large. And just Renfrew alone, they were an issue in the past because they are a very busy area that we would have over 100 matters each time we would have court because we didn't have enough time in Renfrew. So that is putting a lot of burden at the Pembroke court without those courts.
Thank you so much for all that information. That was absolutely necessary for all of us to know. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions? Oh, Mr. Foss needs to say something.
Thank you, Chair. And not so much a question, but we're not in this by ourselves. So the entire East region is overwhelmed with what's taking place. We're no farther ahead or behind than anyone else. And as Jeanette mentioned, you know, although the pandemic began in March and we all converted to a Zoom platform and carried on with whatever business we had to, it took a year for the provincial offences courts to be given the direction to be using an enhanced Zoom platform to begin in virtual court settings. You may recall that we were so concerned about this that we were looking at a pilot project to have our Liberty recording system, which does the audio recording in our court system, to move forward with a virtual platform, but no cost to the county of Renfrew. But we were willing to do anything to advance or to begin this process as quickly as possible. And then, of course, the ministry changed lanes and decided finally that Zoom would be the way to go. So the templates that you're looking at in the attachment have been recommended to us by the Municipal Court Managers Association to get some action on this on a unified level. So your approval of us to move forward with these appeals of support to get some more JP resources in the pipeline will be echoed by every other court in Eastern Ontario, and I suspect the entire province. Maybe they're not in as bad a situation as we are, but to have 5 justices of the peace short has a very direct and significant impact on us. You know, the expectation is that we're 2,500 matters behind, and we'll go to 7,500 matters behind in a very, very short time period. So really seeking this committee's support to move forward and do whatever we can to lobby the East Regional Senior Justice of the Peace to get moving on these issues. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I think I saw Councillor Brose's hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just I think a comment I wanted to add to that, when we look at the drop in revenue in our provincial court offenses, I can see this even getting much worse, because I would think that lawyers were going to tell clients, don't bother pleading guilty, just wait this out and your case will be delayed long enough that it won't have to be adjudicated at all. So just a comment.
Yeah, I agree. There are going to be more and more issues as time progresses. Warden Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. So the province has legislated to seek applications for JPs on an annual basis. So I just checked to see when the last application process occurred, and that was in October. And the indication on the website is they're still reviewing, almost 6 months later, reviewing the applicants. So, you know, there's really, unless they're getting really poor applications, there's really no reason to have vacancies, because it's an annual process. And I'm certainly aware, even from the county of Renfrew, some exceptional people who have applied over the years for JP positions. So, you know, I'm definitely in support of sending this letter, and perhaps we can actually try to get it on the agenda of the EOWC, Paul, and see if we can get the other members of the Warden's Caucus to also send letters in support.
I think that's a great idea, especially since Jeff is alerting us that we're the same all over Eastern Ontario. All right, I did not get a mover and seconder for this resolution. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Brose. Councillor Donahue, did you have a comment?
I did, thank you. A couple of technical points. First, on the form, just bear with me as I'm scrolling here. The incident report, I just wanted to put in front of Ms. Poole that the date for submission is actually a Sunday. I'm not sure if that was intentional. The second component that I wanted to verify with Mr. Foss, if we are short, essentially just in our region alone, 5 justices, then presumably this is a separate issue from COVID, though it has certainly been impacted, I'm sure, by COVID and the lack of sitting even of the justices that we have. Can you confirm that this issue of the shortage or the deficit of justices of the peace has been ongoing for some time?
I can certainly confirm that, and through you, Chair, anecdotally, but perhaps Ms. Poole has some very specific information on the length of time that we have been working without here in Renfrew County, but more specifically about East Region and the vacancies in each region. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanette, did you have anything to add?
I think what's happening also is that a lot of the per diem justice of the peace are retiring because at age 75, they can no longer sit. So we are also losing those. And I know we did lose 2 of them, and I think we're losing a 3rd one. So that also adds to the loss. So it's been an ongoing issue for a long time for this area. because the per diem justice of the peace have been staying on to help with the courts.
Okay, supplementary, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, and I do appreciate both Mr. Foss and Ms. Poole for that clarity. Of course, who could have foreseen that our per diem justice of the peace would one day turn 75? I'm sure that that was outside of the purview of the administration of justice. Everyone has heard it ad nauseum, I'm sure, but it is certainly pertinent in this. Justice must be seen to be done. That was Lord Hewart, the Chief Justice of England in 1923. It is absolutely not being done here. It provides, I suppose, some consolation, though small consolation, when Mr. Foss says that all of the East region, perhaps all of Ontario, is occupying it as a leaky boat. But we're not frontier here. This is absolutely bringing the administration of justice into disrepute. That's a suggestion that both the report has and Councillor Brose had suggested. I don't know that one has to have graduated at the top of one's legal class to have believed that a 7.5-year wait for a POA offense is unlikely to be adjudicated at all. Given that it is absolutely outside of what I would suggest, acknowledging that I am not an adjudicator, though it seems that there is a broad opening in the field. Section 11B guarantees everyone in Canada the right to a speedy trial. That's not at all reasonable here. 7.5 years is not reasonable. 5 years is not reasonable. 3 years is unreasonable. There is an immense number of cases that are not going to be dealt with. We started today's meeting talking about those who are disregarding the safety of our children with respect to the flashing lights on school buses. It is inherently important for the Office of the Attorney General to address this, not just now, but yesterday. This is essentially creating a lawless society here where these are not going to be enforced. And it is unacceptable here or wherever this situation exists. It is certainly stymieing me as to the ministry that is dedicated to the pursuit and application of justice, that they would have allowed this condition to so fester that we find ourselves in this position today. So absolutely, I endorse both the incident report and the letter from the warden.
Okay, and I don't want to cut people off, but the warden does have to leave, and I understand that a couple of other people have meetings at 1 and at 2, so I want to start moving this meeting along, please. So if there's nothing else on POA, can I get all in favor, please? Excellent, that carries. Jeff, if you want to take us through your 2 bylaws.
And thank you very much, Chair. I will certainly do that, and keeping an eye on the clock. The documentation that follows these bylaws is rather lengthy, but I'm going to hopefully relieve you of some of the pain of going through the details of this. Suffice to say that there are a number of recommendations with some bylaws that I will come back to at the end of this very brief summary. Just want to ensure that this committee understands that I did meet with all of your local treasurers twice. The first meeting on Wednesday, March the 25th, and we scheduled a follow-up meeting on Thursday, April the 1st, specifically to deal with some issues that arose from the first meeting. And so we now have I'm going to suggest it's a consensus. I don't think we have anybody opposed to the recommendations that the treasurers are bringing forward. We like to get certainly a consensus if possible, if not in a majority of opinion, but I think we have a consensus with the following. We are recommending, and again, I'll go back to the bylaws and the specific recommendations, but tax ratios which allocate the burden between the classes, we are not recommending you make any changes for 2021. One of the items that came up, and the reason for the second meeting, is yet again, our industrial property class has a ratio that exceeds the provincial threshold of 2.63, and it has been that situation ever since 1998, when we brought this system into play, the Ontario Fair Assessment System in Ontario. We have been dealing with something called a levy restriction, where we can't pass the entire budgetary increase onto all of the classes. We have to restrict it for the industrial to be at the most 50% of what everybody else is seeing from a budgetary increase point of view. And therefore, the ratio between industrial and residential decreases automatically, just mathematically, because of that restriction. And that's been going on for 20 years. And we have reduced that ratio just by this mathematical process by 22%, but we're not there yet. So the treasurers were convinced to have a very hard look at this issue, and we are recommending that not this year, but for 2022, that County Council approve that we move toward our current broad class ratio of 3.16 for industrial down to 2.63. And we do that, phase it in equally over a 2-year period beginning in 2022 and ending in 2023, whereat the broad ratio will then be at 2.63, the provincial threshold, and we will have the ability to then pass on any municipal budgetary increases onto the entire all of the property classes right across the board. What does this mean to us? Well, over 2 years, the industrial group will get a break of a 16% reduction in municipal taxation, and everybody else would have an increase in their share of the tax burden of 0.26 of 1%. Phased in over 2 years, that is 0.13 of 1% each year in 2022 and 2023. And so that is the recommendation that's somewhat different, that's coming forward to you. I also go on to talk about the landfill class, but because there was no reassessment, that ratio does not change. Multi-residential, we took a hard look at multi-res. You will be aware of the fact, and I highlight in my document, that beginning in 2017, the province dictated that any new multi-residential construction will have a tax rate equal to the residential tax rate, but that's only for new construction. So if you had an apartment building or a multi-res complex in Renfrew County for 25 years, you pay 1.93 times the residential rate, and your neighbor that built a brand new apartment building pays the residential rate. And our group thought there was a fairness issue that we might want to try and address. It's very significant, that fairness issue. It is a 48% increase for the multi-res properties and a 1.2% increase to everybody else. To fix this matter, that's a $1.5 million shift in taxation, and the group, I provided them specific information to their own municipalities as well as the aggregate, and the group has decided not to do anything with that particular recommendation. So it's status quo. If you're a multi-res property owner and have been prior to 2017, your tax rate remains unchanged. Your ratio remains unchanged. The levy restriction, because in 2021 it's still in front of us, so upper and lower tier can look at that independently. I've never recommended anything to you other than they should pay their fair share, and so the 50% rule I would recommend that moves forward. Discount rates are eliminated, vacant unit rates are eliminated. We did that with a special regulation with the province in 2018. No change to tax relief for low-income seniors and the disabled. That remains a deferral of any assessment-related increases. The 40% tax relief for registered charity remains in effect. And the only other item on this number is that we would ask all lower tiers to attempt to adopt their budgets and create tax rates prior to June the 18th, so that we all can use the Optus system in order to enter that data and use that as part of our billing software solution to release final tax bills in Renfrew County. So Chair, with that, I would go back to the recommendations on bylaws. Item number 1, and maybe I could do these one at a time, Chair. Item number 1, that the Finance Committee recommends to County Council that a bylaw setting the starting 2021 ratios for county purposes and lower tier purposes for 2021 be adopted at the next session of County Council.
All right, so I'll ask for a mover and seconder on that, please. Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Sweet. Discussion. I just wanted to say one thing. I know it's not on this particular one, but Jeff, one of the, and I hope, God, I hope it will be done by June. One of the challenges some of us are having with passing our budget in public is that some of us have grant monies that haven't been announced, and we're not allowed to put them out into the public. So we have, we've passed ours in principle, but it's very difficult when we're waiting for actual announcements on things. So let's just hope it'll be done by June. But in any case, is there anything on this first recommendation? Councillor Donahue, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with respect to the industrial tax rate, I'm curious, extrapolating the approach that has been taken, how long? Sorry, I see waving. I can be heard. It had nothing to do with me.
We've run her out of time.
Okay, sorry, picking up where I was. So extrapolating on the approach that have been taking through attrition, essentially reaching that point on the industrial tax ratio, how far, I know that it's not a significantly large percentage and likely not a significantly large dollar figure, but how long before we had reached the threshold? Mr. Foss, through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the question, and through you. So 20 years got us 20%. That was the reduction. It's essentially forever because the difference, the gap, continues to reduce slightly, and that depends on the difference between our residential rate increase. So for the county, 2.5%, and they only get 0.125%, 1.25%. And so, it'll be another 100 years by the time we get to that point of getting close enough that it doesn't really matter anymore. It certainly won't matter to me anymore in 100 years. But I think our group felt that we have a manageable gap that we can now take care of in phasing this in at 0.13 of 1% in each of those 2 years without really putting undue financial burden on any of those tax classes. There is a burden. We are shifting taxation, but it's probably well within our time to rid ourselves of this restriction and the complicated tax rate calculations that your treasurers have to go through every year, because it's not straightforward. It's not a half of 2.5%. We have to always factor in notional tax rates, and that's a big complicated calculation. So the time has come for us to get away from this headache, if you will.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Foss. So a century, more or less. And if we're talking about the tax burden, as you're explaining that, I'm thinking to myself of carrying 5 gallons of water and adding a eyedropper more to that 5 gallons of water. So it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on this first recommendation? Councillor Hunt, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Jeff. The multi-residential rate, the new rate, which is 1-to-1 to residential, who is that set by?
Through you, Chair, Province of Ontario. Their legislation that came in 17 that said, hey, we're going to attempt to help the development in Ontario for housing because of the housing crisis. And so nobody in the entire province can have a tax rate any greater than the residential rate for brand new multi-res construction. Although the old multi-res continues to pay with whatever the rate ratio was before.
Okay, thank you. So my point on this one is, and I don't know if there's ever an opportunity to bring it up, but it's something Jennifer and I spoke at when we met about the OPP billing, is with the multi-residential, we pay a policing costs. If there's 20 units in it, we pay 20 policing costs for that building. And it's very hard for the municipalities to recoup their money. I have one in the township, which we collect maybe a third of what we pay out to the OPP in taxation. So I just caution us to keep this in mind when we're dealing with that multi-residential, and is it really fair that it is a 1-to-1? Probably I would support more of a 1.5 to where it was. Anyway, I'm more making a point here. Thank you.
And I totally agree with you, Brian. Anything further on the first recommendation? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. All right, Jeff, second recommendation.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the next bylaw is the landfill class. Typically, this comes forward separately every year because it changes with the assessment increase. We have a new revenue neutral ratio. I've continued to list it separately here, even though it's unchanging. So with your indulgence, Chair, if we could get an acceptance of this ratio in the future, when reassessment comes back to us, that ratio will continue to change every year. So thank you.
Okay, so can I get a mover and seconder on the second recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Brose. Discussion. All in favor? Excellent. And the third recommendation.
The third recommendation, of course, deals with we're not starting to reduce the industrial ratio till next year. So in the meantime, for 2021, we continue to allow the county to apply a 50% increase in the tax rate for the industrial class to what the residential class is paying. So that's, again, can be used at the upper and lower tier independently. And I've always recommended that you move forward and do this at the county level, applying this 50% rule. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask for a mover and seconder on this, please. Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Donahue. Discussion. All in favor? And finally, the fourth recommendation.
And the fourth one, of course, doesn't impact this year, but it does set a course for us and an ability to communicate what will be taking place in the future, that we will phase in the reduction in the industrial ratio over 2 years equally for 2022 and for 2023.
Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Discussion. Looks like you did a pretty good job of giving us all the intel. Jeff, thank you for that. All in favor? And that carries. And finally, we will move to bylaw number 10.
Thank you, Chair. So February the 1st, we set a budget of $48,945,594. You've now adopted tax policies. And with that, we can calculate tax rates. And the tax rates are before you. Those are exactly the same tax rates that we suggested at the budget workshop would happen if in fact we adopted all of the same policies that we did in the prior year. So there's no change to what we communicated previously about the tax rate for the residential class in 21, $375.06 per $100,000 of assessment. And so the recommendation is that we adopt this bylaw at the next session of County Council.
Excellent. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Brose. Discussion. I only had one thing to say. Jeff, you are going to do the tax policy working group presentation at County Council, right? Because I know that's everybody's favorite presentation.
Thank you, Chair. And I know certainly that's one of your favorites. The next time we have reassessment in Ontario, it will be shocking. And so I believe that we will have the full-blown tax policy presentation at that point in time.
I couldn't agree with you more, Fossey. It is going to be shocking. And I am concerned about people's home ownership at that time. All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that carries. Can I get a mover and seconder for the corporate services report as a whole, please? Moved by Councillor Sweet, seconded by Councillor Bros. I thought Paul was voting there. All in favor? And that carries. Is there any new business? Seeing none. We have no need for a closed meeting, Mr. Morrow. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rose.
Are we not going to bring up the letter from the health unit, Mr. Morrow?
Oh, thanks for the reminder, Rose. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Rose. She's always on it.
Yep. Nope. I appreciate that. I just, in response, and in fact, Councillor Doncaster sent me an email yesterday saying had we had heard from the Renfrew County District Health Unit on a response from the warden's letter that was sent earlier to the health unit. And last night at around 4:20, we did receive that response, and that has been sent out to all the committee members for their review.
Thank you. And I will say that was an error on my part as well. I've been in so many Board of Health, Health Committee, resources, meetings that I lost track of where that letter went. And I thought that it had come to the county last month. Yes, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know how well this is going to work because my internet's been just awful this morning, but anyway. So I was wondering about that letter. I've been wondering for a while, and so I did ask yesterday. And then when it didn't come, everybody knows that I do know the chair of the Board of Health. So I did reach out to her, and she said, absolutely, that letter was sent quite some time ago. And then I guess on a follow-up, there was a mix-up on who it was distributed to. So I was happy to see that. What I did want to comment about was the content of the letter itself. I think that it was fairly insightful for me, and it gave me a whole lot of information that I didn't have in the past. And I think it would have been, for me, it would have been helpful to have that information before we asked the warden to send a letter to the health unit. Thank you.
Thanks. Actually, that's exactly the conversation we had at Resources Committee. There was some confusion about why that letter was sent. And I did impart to them that it was because we got 6 or 7 Board of Health meeting minutes, like months and months and months later. They were not aware of that. So that's, you're right, Glenn. If we had had some of that information, it probably would have gone down a bit better. But since we didn't have that information, we didn't have those minutes until Health Committee. I can't even remember, maybe Michael has all the dates. I think we got like March, May, October, November, and January all at once in one package, which was not ideal. So that has now been rectified. Health Committee is now getting Board of Health meeting minutes on the regular, which is very helpful. And again, I've had that letter emailed to me at least 3 times through 3 different committees. So I lost track of who it was being sent to as well. Councillor Donoghue.
I think maybe Councillor Sweet may have been ahead of me in the queue, Madam Chair.
My apologies, Councillor Sweet.
I don't know what letter you're talking about, and do I have a copy of that, or did it come? There's so much paper coming through right now. It's hard to keep track of this, being COVID and all the rest of it. I have a copy of that letter.
You would have gotten it this morning.
Where?
At about
how was it sent to me? I guess, Chair.
From the deputy clerk.
Yeah, Rose sent it out.
An email. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't seen it. That's like the internet? Okay,
That is like the internet,
yeah, okay.
the
Fair enough.
interweb.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bunch of tubes and wires.
I have no idea what that is. Okay.
Counselor Donahue, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and perhaps consistent with Councillor Sweet's comments. I will note, sitting on the Board of Health, that I was present when this was being discussed, though it was intended for this to be sent in early March, unfortunately, and I think that legitimately attributed to COVID. It was simply an oversight that it was not submitted. The letter was presented for review to the Board of Health, I believe at the end of February, and we are just getting it now. But because of the fact that it was only just received this morning, I'm loath even to engage on that. Presumably this is something that can now be put onto the agenda. I'll defer to Mr. Morrow, but because the response was sent, is that something that should be taken up with the Finance Administration Committee in May prior to going to Council? Or would it be the recommendation for this to now go to Council for review? Because without there having been a special meeting or this being added to the agenda, it's probably inappropriate to be discussing it at length.
Chair, if I may, what I would suggest is that we will actually include this in the next F&A report as information, and we'll also include the original letter that was sent noting that this was the response, so we can follow the appropriate process. But given the timelines, I wanted to make sure that committee was aware that we had received it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and it was an oversight. Yes, Councillor Sweet.
Just so you'll know, my admin assistant's not in today. That's why I don't have a copy of it. She does all that stuff through that internet thing for me, and I get a paper copy. So that's why I didn't have it.
Can we get an IT person to Bob's office to help him out?
No, I got one. Just that she's off on holidays today.
Perhaps one of his grandchildren.
That absolutely. She sits right.
Absolutely.
Way too old for this stuff.
Is there any other new business? All right, seeing none. Our next meeting is Thursday, May 13th, 2021. How this year is coming along. Can we get a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councillor Donahue, second by Councillor Brose. Any discussion? I didn't think so. All in favor? Great work today, team. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.